Story 1, The Mile That Never Ends. The odometer stopped at mile marker 1847 on Interstate 40, but I've been driving for 6 hours past it. Every time I check, it still reads 1847. Every single time. The fuel gauge hasn't moved either, stuck at 3/4 full, and the clock on my dash blinks 11:47 p.m. in red digits that seem to pulse with my accelerating heartbeat. My name is Robert Hayes, and I'm trapped in a mile that refuses to let me leave. The same dead armadillo appears on the shoulder every 4 minutes. I've counted. I've hit it 23 times now, felt the same bump under my right rear tire, heard the same crack, but when I check my mirrors, it's whole again, waiting on the roadside for the next pass. I've been hauling refrigerated pharmaceuticals from Amarillo to Little Rock, a routine run I'd made maybe 50 times in my 8 years driving for Midwest Medical Transport. March 14th, 2023 started like any other Tuesday. Clear skies, light traffic, my reefer unit humming its usual monotonous song. I'd stopped at the Love S in Shamrock for fuel and a breakfast burrito that sat heavy in my gut. That was 7 hours ago by my phone's clock, though my dash still insists it's 11:47 p.m. My phone lost signal around what should have been midnight, the bars disappearing one by one until the screen showed only the time, continuing to count forward while everything in my truck stayed frozen. Impossible. I tried the CB radio. Static. I tried my phone again. No signal, but the screen worked, showing 12:53 a.m. now. I'd been driving for over an hour past mile marker 1847 according to my phone, but the marker kept appearing every few minutes, its reflective white numbers catching my headlights like accusing eyes. The landscape repeated too. The same cluster of 3 mailboxes. The same leaning fence post with barbed wire that dangled in a specific curl. The same tree with branches that reached across the highway like grasping fingers. By the 4th loop, panic crept into my chest, cold and tight. I tried stopping, pulled onto the shoulder, set my air brakes with a hiss that sounded too loud in the oppressive silence. I climbed down from the cab, my boots hitting asphalt that felt wrong somehow, too soft, like stepping on flesh instead of pavement. The night air was perfectly still. No wind, no insects, no sound at all except my breathing and the tick of my engine cooling. The stars overhead looked painted on, flat against the sky, not twinkling but static like dead pixels on a screen. I walked behind my trailer, checking the reefer unit, running normally. Temperature holding steady at 38 degrees Fahrenheit. The cargo was fine. I was the one falling apart. I grabbed my tire thumper from the side compartment, the solid weight of the wooden club comforting in my hands, though I didn't know what I thought I'd hit with it. The road, the night, my own breaking mind. When I climbed back in the cab and released the brakes, I told myself I'd just drive. Keep going. Eventually, I'd pass 1847. Eventually, I'd reach 1848. The numbers had to change. Mathematics demanded it. Physics insisted on it. Reality required it. But reality had stopped making demands here. I watched the odometer, watched the mile marker approach, past it. Counted seconds. 1, 2, 3. At 240 seconds, exactly 4 minutes, there it was again. Mile marker 1847. I screamed then, a raw sound that hurt my throat, and I slammed my fist into the steering wheel. The horn blared, but the sound seemed to stop at my windshield, not traveling beyond the glass, trapped inside with me. The landscape began changing subtly on the 7th loop. The dead armadillo wasn't just dead anymore, it was flatter. On the 8th loop, it was just a red smear with a few tufts of hair. On the 9th, it was gone, but the stain remained. On the 10th loop, the stain had spread across both lanes, and I had to drive through it, felt my tires slip slightly in whatever it had become. The billboard cowboy's smile looked wider. His teeth seemed sharper. Or maybe I was losing it. Maybe I'd been losing it since Amarillo, since Shamrock, since I climbed into this cab and turned the key. Maybe there never was a mile marker 1848. Maybe the universe just ended here at 1847, and I was caught in the seam where reality forgot to continue. On Loop 15, I saw another truck. A Peterbilt, older model, red paint job faded to rust in patches. It sat on the shoulder ahead, flashers dark, cab tilted slightly like it had suspension problems. I nearly wept with relief. Another person, another driver, someone who could tell me I wasn't insane, that this was happening, that there was a way out. I pulled alongside, hitting my air horn. No response. The Peterbilt just sat there, driver's door hanging open, the interior light a pale yellow that seemed sickly in the darkness. I grabbed my flashlight and tire thumper, climbing down again onto that soft asphalt. My boot stuck slightly with each step, making small sucking sounds that turned my stomach. The Peterbilt's cab was empty, but the driver's seat was warm. I touched it with my palm, felt heat radiating through the worn leather. The keys hung in the ignition. A half-eaten sandwich sat on the dash, bread fresh, lettuce not wilted. A thermos of coffee still steamed. Someone had been here moments ago, but the dust on the dashboard was thick, undisturbed except for the clear spot where the sandwich sat. Dust that looked years old coating every surface, except for that fresh sandwich and the warm seat. I backed away from the Peterbilt, my flashlight beam shaking. As I retreated toward my own truck, my light swept across the trailer behind the other rig. The doors hung open, swaying gently despite the absence of wind. The interior was empty, completely empty. No cargo, but carved into every metal surface, covering the walls and ceiling and floor, were the numbers 1847. Thousands of them, scratched into the metal with desperate, jagged strokes, some carved so deep the metal had buckled. Some written small and precise, some huge and violent, the gouges catching my light and reflecting it back in accusatory gleams. I ran, sprinted back to my truck, my breath coming in gasps that tasted like copper and fear. I threw myself into the cab, released the brakes, and gunned the engine, my Detroit diesel roaring as I pushed the accelerator to the floor. The speedometer climbed. 50, 60, 70. Faster than I'd ever driven a fully loaded semi, fast enough that the trailer began to sway behind me, threatening to jackknife, but I didn't care. I had to get past 1847. Had to reach 1848. Had to escape. The mile marker appeared. I flew past it doing 73 miles per hour. Counted again, 4 minutes. There it was, mile marker 1847. I was sobbing now, tears blurring the road ahead, my hands cramping on the wheel. The Peterbilt appeared again, doors still open, the numbers 1847 visible even from the highway, scratched into every surface of that empty trailer. On Loop 22, I tried driving backward. Put my rig in reverse and backed down the highway, my spine screaming in protest as I twisted in my seat to watch the road behind me through my mirrors. The landscape played backward like a film in reverse. The mailboxes, the fence post, the billboard with its too-many-teethed cowboy, and then mile marker 1847 appearing on my left instead of my right, but still there, still the same, still refusing to release me. Loop 28, the numbers began appearing on my windshield, scratched into the glass from the inside, though I hadn't touched it. 1847. Then again. 1847. The numbers multiplied, spreading across the glass like frost, like disease, blocking my view until I was staring through a web of scratched numbers that caught and refracted my headlights into dizzying patterns. Loop 33, I felt the carving begin on my arm. Looked down to see 1847 appearing in my skin, not cut but raised, like brands, the numbers forming slowly in red welts that burned and itched. I screamed and clawed at them, but they kept appearing. On my other arm, on my chest beneath my shirt. When I checked the rearview mirror, they were spreading across my face, 1847 written over and over in my own flesh. Loop 41, the Peterbilt was closer to the road. Hadn't been before. Now the front bumper nearly touched the white line. As I passed, I saw the driver's door was shut now, and someone was behind the wheel. I caught only a glimpse, but it was enough. The figure wore a trucker's cap, a Midwest medical transport jacket, had a scraggly beard like mine, raised a hand that was covered in raised numbers, waving at me as I passed. The face was mine. The driver was me. I stopped counting loops after 50. The numbers covered my entire body now, burning their way through my clothes, appearing on every inch of exposed skin and creating new designs on top of old ones. My CB crackled to life finally, but the voice that came through was mine, repeating coordinates. 35.218 north, 99.326 west, mile marker 1847. The same coordinates, my voice begging for help, my voice screaming, my voice going silent. My phone died at what its screen claimed was 4:47 a.m., 6 hours after I'd entered this loop, though it felt like years. The last thing I saw before the screen went black was a news notification. Missing trucker Robert Hayes, age 34, last seen March 14, 2023, near mile marker 1847 on Interstate 40. Vehicle found abandoned. Trailer doors open. Cab empty except for thousands of scratch marks reading 1847 carved into every surface. Blood found on driver's seat still warm. Driver never located. But I'm still here, still driving, still passing mile marker 1847 every 4 minutes. The dead armadillo is back, whole again, waiting for my tire. The billboard cowboy. Grins with too many teeth. My fuel gauge reads 3/4 full. The clock blinks 11:47 p.m. And ahead on the shoulder, I can see my truck, my Freightliner with its Midwest Medical Transport logo, doors hanging open, and a figure climbing down, a figure that looks lost and scared and alive. I wonder if he'll see me on his 28th loop. I wonder if the numbers will start appearing on his skin too. I wonder how many of us are driving this same mile, passing each other without knowing, each trapped in our own version of 1847, each becoming another ghost on a road that never ends. The odometer still reads 1847. It will always read 1847. And I will always be here, driving, watching the same dead armadillo appear every 4 minutes, feeling the numbers burn deeper into my skin, waiting for mile marker 1848 that will never come. Story 2, the breathing cargo. The container was breathing, not the mechanical rhythm of my reefer unit compressor, but the slow, organic rise and fall of living lungs. I pressed my palm against the trailer's exterior wall and I felt it. Inhale, exhale. The metal expanded and contracted beneath my hand like a rib cage. My name is Patricia Sullivan, and I've been a long-haul driver for 12 years, hauling everything from electronics to livestock, but I'd never hauled something that breathed through the walls of its container. The shipping manifest said medical waste, 42 pallets of expired biological material bound for an incineration facility outside of Memphis. Simple job, good pay, no questions asked. I should have asked questions. I picked up the load at 6:17 p.m. on November 3, 2023, from a warehouse in Tulsa that looked abandoned from the outside. No signs, no company name, just a rusted metal building with a loading dock where a man in a surgical mask handed me the paperwork without making eye contact. His hands shook when he passed me the clipboard, and I noticed his fingernails were black, not with dirt, but with something that looked like rot or disease. He smelled like formaldehyde and something else, something organic and wrong, like meat left in the sun. The container was already sealed, the doors bolted with a lock that looked older than my truck, heavy iron with strange symbols etched into the metal. The man handed me the key on a chain that was cold enough to burn my palm. He told me 3 things: don't stop except for fuel, don't open the doors under any circumstances, and don't listen if you hear sounds from inside. Medical waste shifts, he said, makes noises, gases build up. It's normal. His eyes said it wasn't normal. His eyes said he was lying. I should have refused the load right there, should have unhooked from that trailer and driven away. But the payment was $15,000 for a single overnight run, $15,000 for 8 hours of driving. I had bills, I had debt, I had reasons that seemed important then but feel stupid now. The first hour was fine. Interstate 40 east through Oklahoma, the sun setting behind me, painting the sky in reds and purples that looked too vivid, too saturated, like someone had adjusted the color settings on reality. My reefer unit hummed along at 34 degrees Fahrenheit, maintaining temperature like it should. The trailer pulled straight and true, everything normal, everything fine. Then I felt the first breath. I thought it was wind, a gust that caught the trailer broadside and made it shudder, but there was no wind. The trees along the highway stood perfectly still, their branches motionless against the darkening sky. I felt it again. A distinct expansion of the trailer behind me, strong enough to make my 5th wheel groan. I checked my mirrors. The trailer looked normal, white corrugated sides. The old lock on the rear doors, nothing unusual, but I felt it again. Inhale, the trailer pulling slightly at my cab. Exhale, a gentle push. By the Arkansas border, the breathing had developed a rhythm. 7 seconds between each breath. I counted them obsessively, my eyes flicking between the road and the second hand on my watch. 7 seconds, every time. Like clockwork, like a machine. But machines don't breathe. Machines don't make the metal groan the way my trailer was groaning, a sound like vocal cords trying to form words through a throat that wasn't designed for speech. I stopped for fuel at a Flying J outside Fort Smith, pulling into the diesel lanes with my heart hammering. The breathing had gotten louder. I could hear it now over my engine, over the hiss of my air brakes, over everything. A wet, labored sound like someone drowning slowly. The other drivers didn't seem to notice. They pumped fuel, checked tires, went about their business while my trailer heaved and gasped behind me. I approached the rear doors with my flashlight, knowing I shouldn't, knowing what the man with the rotting fingernails had told me, but unable to stop myself. The lock was frosted over despite the mild November temperature. Ice crystals grew across its surface in patterns that looked deliberate, almost like writing in a language I didn't know. I reached out to touch it, and my fingers stuck to the metal, the ice searing my skin. The breathing stopped, complete silence. No reefer hum, no engine noise from nearby trucks, no traffic from the highway. Everything went quiet in a way that made my ears ring. I pulled my hand free, leaving skin behind, blood freezing instantly to the lock. The silence held for 3 seconds, 4, 5. Then the screaming started. Not one voice, but dozens, maybe hundreds, all screaming together from inside my trailer. High-pitched shrieks, low moans, words in languages I didn't recognize. And beneath it all, that breathing, faster now, panicked like something fighting for air that wouldn't come. I ran, sprinted back to my cab and climbed in, slamming the door, locking it, turning my radio up as loud as it would go to drown out the sounds. But I could still hear them. Could feel them vibrating through the chassis of my truck, through my seat, through my bones. I should have called the police, should have reported the load, should have unhooked and walked away. Instead, I drove, put my truck in gear and pulled back onto I-40 headed east, the screaming continuing behind me, fading gradually over the next 10 miles until there was only the breathing again, slow and steady, 7 seconds between each breath. My phone rang at 10:34 p.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I needed to hear a human voice, needed confirmation that the world outside my cab was still normal and sane. I hit the button on my Bluetooth. The voice that answered was mine. My exact voice, my accent, my inflection. It said my name, Patricia Sullivan. Then it said things I'd never told anyone, secrets from my childhood, the name of my first pet, what I'd whispered to my mother in the hospital before she died. Intimate details of my life spoken in my own voice, coming from someone who couldn't possibly know them. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I ignored it. It kept ringing. 23 times. Each time I let it go to voicemail, and each time my own voice left a message that started with my name and then devolved into screaming, into begging, into words that weren't words but wet, choking sounds. The trailer began leaking at mile marker 264. Not coolant or hydraulic fluid, but something thick and dark that looked black in my mirrors but red when my taillights hit it. It dripped from the seams where the doors met, pooling on the asphalt behind me, leaving a trail that stretched back into the darkness. I watched in my mirror as that trail began to steam, vapor rising from it in columns that twisted and writhed like they were alive. The breathing had changed. It was faster now, desperate, and I could feel heat radiating from the trailer, feel it through my cab wall, hot enough to make sweat bead on my back despite the cold night air. My reefer unit was still running, still showing 34 degrees on the display, but the trailer was burning up, the metal hot enough to shimmer. At 11:47 p.m., something hit the interior wall of my trailer hard enough to make my whole truck shudder. Then again, a rhythmic pounding that matched the breathing. 7 seconds between each impact. Something inside was throwing itself against the walls, and each impact left a dent I could see in my mirrors, the metal buckling outward like a fist pushing through from inside. I passed a way station. Closed. But there was a truck parked in the lot, another big rig, and as I passed I saw the driver standing outside his cab, staring at my trailer. His mouth was open in a perfect O of horror, and he was making the sign of the cross over and over, his hand moving frantically. I saw him reach for his phone, saw his lips moving, and then he was behind me, swallowed by distance and darkness. The dents grew larger, the impacts harder. My trailer was coming apart from the inside, seams splitting, rivets popping free and pinging off the asphalt. The breathing was a roar now, and the heat was intense enough to fog my rear window. I could smell it, acrid and chemical and organic all at once, a smell like burning hair and rotting fruit and something else, something that made my hindbrain scream at me to run. Mile marker 312, one of the rear doors tore free. I heard the shriek of metal giving way, felt my trailer lurch, and then my mirrors showed the door cartwheeling away into the darkness, tumbling end over end before crashing into the trees beside the highway. The trailer was open. Whatever was inside could get out, was getting out. I looked in my mirror and immediately wished I hadn't. The cargo wasn't pallets, wasn't medical waste. It was bodies, dozens of them, hundreds, stacked floor to ceiling, packed so tightly they'd fused together into a single mass of flesh, a writhing amalgamation of limbs and faces and torsos all. Breathing together, all moving together, all screaming through mouths that shared tongues and teeth. They spilled from the open door like a living waterfall, hitting the highway and pulling themselves forward with arms that had too many joints, with hands that had fingers growing from the palms. The mass was chasing me. I could see it in my mirror, undulating down the highway behind my truck, moving impossibly fast, mouths opening and closing, screaming my name with my voice, Patricia Sullivan, come back, Patricia Sullivan, we need you, Patricia Sullivan. Eyes opened in its surface, dozens of them, hundreds, all focused on my cab, all pleading and hungry and terrified. I pushed my accelerator to the floor. My Detroit diesel screamed in protest, my trailer, now lighter, swaying wildly behind me, but the mass was faster. It flowed across the asphalt like water, like oil, closing the distance. 50 yards, 40, 30. I could see individual faces now, people I recognized, my mother, my ex-husband. A driver I'd met at a truck stop 3 years ago, a clerk from the warehouse in Tulsa. All of them absorbed into this mass, all of them screaming, all of them reaching. The second door tore free at mile marker 327. The mass poured out faster now, spreading across both lanes, flowing around other vehicles on the highway. I watched a sedan get engulfed, watched it disappear into the flesh, watched new faces appear on the surface of the mass moments later, the driver and his passenger now part of it, their mouths forming my name. My phone rang. I answered without thinking. My voice said I was already inside, said I'd been inside since Tulsa. Said the woman driving was just an echo, a memory, a shell, said to look at my hands. I looked. My fingernails were black, not dirty, black with rot, with the same disease I'd seen on the man at the warehouse. I touched my face and felt my skin move wrong, felt it shift and crawl like it wasn't quite attached anymore. The mass reached my trailer, began flowing inside, began filling the space, and I felt the weight increase, felt my truck slow despite the accelerator being floored. It was climbing inside, coming forward. I could hear it breathing just behind the cab wall, could hear wet sounds as it pressed against the metal, could hear my name spoken by 1,000 mouths at once. I reached for the door handle. It was locked. Not with my lock, but with ice, the same frost I'd seen on the rear doors, spreading across the handle and the door panel and the window. I couldn't get out. The mass was seeping through the sleeper curtain behind my seat, oozing into my cab in thick tendrils that smelled like formaldehyde and meat and my mother's perfume. It touched my shoulder. I felt fingers, dozens of them, all small and cold and searching. They found the base of my neck, began pressing, began pushing inside my skin, and I opened my mouth to scream, but what came out was the breathing, that 7-second rhythm, inhale and exhale, my lungs moving in time with the mass. I'm writing this on the message screen of my CB radio, broadcasting it on channel 19, hoping someone will hear, will understand, will know what happened to Patricia Sullivan. But my hands are moving wrong now, my fingers bending at new angles, and I can feel more of them growing from my palms, small fingers with black nails that tap against the microphone. The breathing continues. 7 seconds, always 7 seconds. The load must be delivered. Memphis is still 3 hours away. The incineration facility is waiting. And I'm waiting too, behind the wheel, driving east, breathing in rhythm with my cargo, feeling myself become part of it. If you see a white trailer on I-40 with the rear doors missing, don't look inside. Don't try to help. Just drive past and pray the mass doesn't know your name. Pray it doesn't start breathing in rhythm with you. Pray your fingernails stay clean. Mine are black to the cuticle now, and I can feel so many fingers growing. Story 3, the station that moves. I've stopped at the same rest station 4 times tonight, but it's never in the same location. Mile marker 89 on Highway 83 through North Dakota, that's where it was the first time. Then mile marker 143, then 276. Now it's back at 89 again, but everything inside has changed. The vending machines are in different positions. The bathroom stalls are different colors. The maps on the wall show highways that don't exist. My name is Marcus Chen, and I've been trapped in a rest station that won't let me leave, won't stay still, and won't stop changing every time I walk through its doors. It's 2:38 a.m. on January 8th, 2023, and I needed to piss so badly my back teeth were floating. I'd been hauling grain from Minot to Pier, a boring run through flat darkness where the only entertainment was counting the distant lights of farmhouses and trying to remember the words to songs from high school. The rest area appear. At exactly when I needed it, like it had been waiting for me, a small brick building with sodium lights that cast everything in sick yellow tones. I pulled my Kenworth into the truck parking area, setting my air brakes with a hiss that sounded too loud in the vast silence of the Dakota night. 3 other trucks were parked there. A Peterbilt with Nebraska plates, a Freightliner with Ontario tags, an old Mack that looked like it hadn't moved since the 1980s, rust eating through the wheel wells, tires flat and rotted. No lights in any of them, no movement, just empty hulks sitting in the sodium glow. The building was open. The door swung easily under my hand, no resistance, and I stepped into fluorescent brightness that made my eyes water after hours of darkness. Standard rest area, bathroom, vending machines, a wall of tourist brochures advertising attractions in towns I'd never heard of, a drinking fountain that burbled quietly to itself. Nothing unusual, nothing wrong. But the clock on the wall showed 9:47 p.m. My watch showed 2:38 a.m. I stared at them both, waiting for one to be right, for reality to decide which time was real. Neither changed. The wall clock kept ticking forward from 9:47. My watch kept counting seconds past 2:38. Both of them running, both of them real, both of them true in ways that made my head hurt. I used the bathroom, washed my hands. The soap dispenser gave me blue liquid that smelled like artificial cherry, and the water from the faucet ran cold and then hot and then cold again without me touching the temperature control. In the mirror, I looked tired. Stubble on my chin, dark circles under my eyes, normal. But my reflection blinked 3 seconds after I did. I saw the delay clearly, saw my reflection's eyes close after mine had already opened. I stood there frozen, blinking rapidly, and my reflection lagged behind every time, a 3-second delay like a video call with bad latency. I left quickly, pushing through the door into the parking lot, and my truck was gone. The Kenworth with my name on the door panel, the load of grain, all of it gone. The parking spaces were empty except for those 3 trucks, the Peterbilt and the Freightliner and the ancient Mack. I spun in a circle, looking for my rig, looking for any explanation. The highway was visible from the rest area, and I could see a single set of taillights disappearing to the south. My taillights. My truck was leaving without me. I ran, sprinted across the parking lot toward the highway, my boots slapping pavement, my breath coming in gasps. But the distance didn't close. I ran and ran, my legs burning, my lungs screaming, and the highway stayed the same distance away, maybe 200 yards, the taillights shrinking to red pinpricks and then vanishing. I stopped, bent over, hands on my knees, tasting copper and panic. When I looked back, the rest station was directly behind me. I hadn't moved at all. My boot prints showed in the frost on the asphalt, starting at the rest station door and coming straight back to where I stood, no deviation, no sprint across the parking lot. Just 10 feet of prints in a straight line from the door to here. I walked back to the building. The door opened at my touch. Inside, the vending machines were in different positions. Before, the soda machine had been on the left, the snack machine on the right. Now they were reversed. The clock on the wall showed 2:38 a.m., the same time as my watch now. The bathroom door was blue instead of green. The tourist brochures advertised a town called Esperance, North Dakota, population 734, home of the world's largest ball of barbed wire. I'd lived in North Dakota for 5 years. There was no town called Esperance. I tried my phone. No signal. Not unusual for rural North Dakota, but the screen showed something impossible. My GPS placed me at mile marker 143, 94 miles south of where I'd stopped. The rest area showed on the map, a small icon on Highway 83, but when I'd entered it the first time, the mile marker outside had definitely said 89. The door opened. A man walked in, trucker by his clothes, by the way he moved with the slight bow-legged gait of someone who spent 14 hours a day sitting. He was maybe 60, gray beard, Peterbilt cap, a gut that hung over his belt buckle. He didn't look at me. Walked straight to the bathroom, went inside, and I heard the sound of water running. I waited. The water kept running. 5 minutes, 10. The bathroom door was shut and I could see light under it, could hear that constant rush of water, but the man didn't come out. I knocked. No answer. I tried the handle, locked from inside. I knocked again, harder, and the water stopped. Silence. Then a voice, the man's voice, but wrong somehow. The pitch shifted too high. Said that Marcus Chen needed to stop knocking. That Marcus Chen needed to wait his turn. That Marcus Chen had been here before and would be here again, and should know the rules by now. I stepped back from the door. I'd never told him my name. The voice continued, muffled through the door, reciting facts about my life, my birthday, my mother's maiden name, the make and model of my first car, the name of the girl I'd lost my virginity to. Things no stranger could know, delivered in that wrong-pitched voice through a locked bathroom door while water started running again. I left the building. The parking lot had changed. Now there were 7 trucks, the original 3 plus 4 more, including my Kenworth. I ran to it, grabbed the door handle, and it opened. The keys were in the ignition. The load was intact. Everything normal. I climbed in, started the engine, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. The diesel caught, rumbled to life, and I put it in gear, released the brakes, and pulled toward the exit. The exit was gone. Where the ramp back to Highway 83 should have been, there was just more parking lot, stretching into darkness, rows of empty spaces extending farther than my headlights could reach. I turned around, tried the entrance. Same thing. Parking lot extending forever, the white lines of empty spaces disappearing into infinite darkness. I stopped, set my brakes, tried to think. The rest area building sat in its pool of yellow sodium light, looking exactly the same, looking perfectly normal except for the impossible parking lot, and the man who was still in the bathroom, and the fact that my reflection had delayed blinks and my truck had driven away without me before reappearing. And none of this was possible, but all of it was happening. Other drivers started emerging from their trucks. The ones that had been here when I arrived, plus drivers from the new arrivals. They walked toward the building in a line, not speaking, not looking at each other. 7 of them. They moved in perfect synchronization, their steps matching, their arms swinging in identical arcs. I watched them enter the building single file, and through the windows I saw them line up at the vending machines, saw them each insert coins, saw them each select the same button, saw them each retrieve the same candy bar. They opened them in unison, took bites at the same moment, chewed the same number of times. I locked my doors. The synchronized drivers finished their candy bars, threw away the wrappers in a single motion, and walked back outside. They stood in the parking lot facing my truck, their faces blank in the sodium light. Then they raised their right hands, all 7 of them, and pointed at me. Pointed and held the gesture, statues in a parking lot that extended into forever, pointing and staring while my heart tried to jackhammer through my ribs. I don't know how long we stayed like that. My watch kept running, but time felt wrong, elastic, stretching and compressing. It might have been minutes, might have been hours. The pointing drivers never moved, never blinked, never lowered their arms. I could see my breath fogging in the cab despite the heater running. Could see frost spreading across my windshield from the inside, delicate patterns that looked like reaching hands. The rest area building changed while I watched. The walls rippled like water, the bricks flowing and reforming into wood siding, then back to brick, then to concrete, then to brick again. The roof sagged and lifted. The door changed colors, cycling through green and red and blue and yellow before settling on brown. The windows multiplied, then decreased, then multiplied again. The building was shifting through versions of itself, showing me every iteration it had ever been, every configuration, every possibility. My CB radio crackled to life. Channel 19. A voice came through my voice, Marcus Chen calling for assistance. Marcus Chen at mile marker 89, no wait 143, no wait 276. Marcus Chen trapped at a rest area that won't stay still. The voice was panicked, desperate, begging for help. But I wasn't transmitting. My radio was on, but my mic was hung on the hook. The voice was coming from somewhere else, some other version of me in some other version of now. The bathroom door opened. The man came out, but he'd changed. His beard was longer down to his chest, gray turned white. He'd aged decades in the time he'd been inside. He walked past the pointing drivers, walked to the ancient Mack truck with its flat, rotted tires, climbed into the cab, and started the engine. It coughed to life, diesel smoke belching black in the sodium light. The truck pulled forward on its flat tires, rubber flapping and shredding, rims scraping pavement, throwing sparks. It drove toward the darkness where the exit should have been and vanished into it, taillights disappearing instantly like someone had turned off a switch. The pointing drivers lowered their arms. They turned away from me, walked back to their trucks, climbed into their cabs, and disappeared. Not drove away. Disappeared. Their trucks were there, and then they weren't, blinking out of existence. Between one moment and the next, leaving empty parking spaces with oil stains and trash but no vehicles. I was alone, my Kenworth, the rest area building cycling through its infinite versions, the parking lot extending forever in all directions, the highway visible in the distance but unreachable, the clock on the building wall showing through the window, the time changing randomly, jumping from 9:47 to 2:38 to 11:23 to 6:54, never moving forward in sequence, just jumping to different times, different possibilities. I tried driving again, put my truck in gear and picked a direction, any direction, driving across the parking lot toward the darkness. I drove for what felt like hours, my speedometer showing 40 miles per hour, my odometer ticking forward, but when I checked my mirrors, the rest area building was the same size, the same distance behind me, never getting farther away no matter how far I drove. I stopped at what my odometer claimed was 73 miles, got out. The rest area building was 50 feet behind me. I could read the sign over the door. Rest area 83, welcome travelers. I walked back to it. The door opened at my touch. Inside, the vending machines were empty, their coils bare. The bathroom door was gone, just a wall where it should have been. The clock showed my birth date and time. The tourist brochures advertised my funeral. I left, my truck was gone again. I walked to where I'd parked it, found tire tracks in frost that shouldn't exist in this heated building, followed them across the parking lot, and they led me back to the door. A loop. Everything was a loop. The rest area, the parking lot, time, reality. All of it circles within circles, and I was caught in the center, unable to find the edge, unable to escape. The building changed again. When I went back inside, there were other people. Dozens of them, all truckers, all standing motionless, facing the walls, their hands pressed flat against brick and wood and concrete. They stood in perfect silence, and as I watched, their hands began to sink into the walls, fingers disappearing first, then palms, then wrists. The walls were absorbing them slowly, and none of them struggled, none of them fought. They just stood there, being consumed by architecture that shouldn't be alive but clearly was. I recognized one of them, a woman named Sandra who I'd met at a truck stop in Fargo 2 years ago. We'd had coffee, talked about routes and weather and the best places for breakfast. She was 3/4 into the wall now, her face pressed against the brick, her eyes open and aware and looking at me. Her mouth moved, forming words the wall muffled to nothing. I pulled at her arm, the part still visible, trying to drag her out. Her skin was cold, hard, turning to the same brick as the wall. I jerked my hand back, and my palm was red with friction burn, scraped raw by contact with her transforming flesh. Sandra's eyes pleaded with me. Then she was gone, pulled completely into the wall, nothing remaining but a slight bulge in the brick that might have been a face, might have been nothing. I ran outside. The parking lot was full again. Hundreds of trucks, now thousands, extending in rows that disappeared into infinity. Every make, every model, every color, some old enough to be museum pieces. Some so new I could smell the factory paint. All of them empty, all of them waiting. The rest area building began to move. Not shifting through versions, but physically moving, sliding across the parking lot toward me, its foundation scraping pavement with a sound like tearing metal. I backed away, and it followed, accelerating, the door yawning open like a mouth, the interior darkness absolute and hungry. I turned and ran, weaving between trucks, my breath tearing in my throat. The building chased me, sliding faster than I could run, and its shadow fell over me, cold and heavy and final. I felt the darkness touch my back, felt it start to pull me in, felt the same coldness Sandra's skin had held spreading through my body from the point of contact. Then I was inside. Not the rest area but my truck behind the wheel, engine running, parked at a rest area on Highway 83 at mile marker 89. The clock on my dash showed 2:38 a.m. My watch showed the same. The 3 trucks were there, the Peterbilt and Freightliner and Ancient Mac. Everything exactly like it had been when I'd first pulled in. I didn't get out. I released my brakes and pulled away, accelerating onto the highway, watching the rest area shrink in my mirrors. It looked normal, innocent. Just a small brick building with sodium lights and a sign that said Rest Area 83, Welcome Travelers. But I check my hands every few minutes now, studying the skin, looking for any signs of hardness of transformation. I avoid looking in mirrors because my reflection still blinks 3 seconds late. And on my GPS, small icons have started appearing. Rest areas, dozens of them, hundreds, all along Highway 83, all marked. Rest Area 83, all at different mile markers, all waiting. I have to deliver this grain to pier, have to complete the run, but every rest area I pass looks the same. Every parking lot could be infinite. Every building could start cycling through its versions. And I wonder how many times I've already stopped there. How many times I've already been absorbed. How many versions of Marcus Chen are pressed into those walls, their hands and faces trapped in brick and wood and concrete, watching new drivers pull in, unable to warn them, unable to do anything but sink deeper. My fuel gauge shows 3/4 full. It's been showing 3/4 full for the last 200 miles. Story 4, the weight that accumulates. Every mile I drive, my truck gets heavier. The gauges don't show it. The load is sealed, supposed to be 40,000 pounds of steel coils from Gary to Nashville, but I can feel the weight increasing, feel my engine strain, feel my brakes heat up on downhills that should be easy. My name is James Crawford, and I've gained 600 pounds of weight in the last hour. Weight that shouldn't exist. Weight I can't see. Weight that's going to crush me and my truck into the pavement if I don't figure out what's happening. The scale at the Gary facility showed 80,000 pounds total, legal and licensed. The portable scale at the rest area 20 miles back showed 86,400. I'm getting heavier, and I don't know why. I started feeling it around Seymour, Indiana, on Interstate 65 South, about 11:15 p.m. on August 19, 2023. The trailer behind me suddenly felt like it had another axle worth of weight, and I had to push my accelerator farther to maintain speed on a flat, straight section where I should have been cruising easy. I checked my mirrors. The trailer rode lower on its suspension, squatting on the springs like it was overloaded. But I'd watched them load this freight myself. 5 steel coils, banded and secured, exactly 40,000 pounds. I had the certified scale ticket in my logbook. By Louisville, my engine was screaming to maintain 55 miles per hour on level ground. The transmission hunted between gears, confused by resistance that shouldn't be there. My temperature gauges climbed. Coolant at 210 degrees. Transmission fluid at 220. Hotter than normal but not critical yet. Other trucks blew past me, their drivers probably wondering why I was crawling along like I had a governor set at 55. I pulled onto the shoulder, set my air brakes, and climbed out to check the load. The seals on my trailer doors were intact, the numbers matching my paperwork unbroken. I walked around the trailer checking tires, all properly inflated. No flats, no damage, but the suspension was compressed like I was grossly overweight, the trailer frame riding maybe 6 inches lower than it should. I kicked the tires, checked the 5th wheel coupling, looked for anything wrong. Nothing. Everything normal, except for the weight I could feel but couldn't see. Back in the cab, I tried my CB, asking if anyone else had experienced sudden weight gain in their loads. Channel 19 crackled with the usual chatter, drivers talking about traffic and weather and lot lizards, but no one answered my question. I asked again. Nothing, like they couldn't hear me or chose not to answer or thought I was crazy. By Elizabethtown, 50 miles farther south, I was struggling to maintain 45 miles per hour. My engine temperature had climbed to 220 degrees. My brakes were smoking. I could smell them, hot friction material and cooking grease, acrid smoke trailing behind my truck. The dashboard was a constellation of warning lights. Low power, high temperature, check engine. My Detroit diesel was screaming in protest, and the weight kept increasing with every mile. I stopped at a Love S, pulled onto their CAT scale, and waited for the weight reading. The display flashed, calculating, then showed numbers that made my stomach drop. 91,200 pounds. I'd gained 11,000 pounds since Gary, 11,000 pounds of nothing. The load was still sealed. The trailer showed no signs of tampering. But I was 21,000 pounds overweight, enough to get my license suspended, enough to get my truck impounded, enough to crush my axles into scrap metal. I bought the scale ticket, the slip of paper proof of something impossible, and sat in my cab staring at it. 91,200 pounds. The number didn't change no matter how long I looked at it. I pulled forward, parked in the truck lot, and called dispatch. The phone rang 8 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I tried the after-hours emergency line. It rang continuously, no answer, no voicemail, just endless ringing that filled my ear like an accusation. I got out and opened my trailer doors, breaking the seal, knowing this would cause problems but needn't. To see what was inside. The coils were there, 5 of them. Massive steel cylinders banded with metal strapping, secured to the floor with chains. Normal, correct, exactly what should be there. But the trailer interior looked smaller somehow, the walls closer together, the ceiling lower. I pulled out my tape measure, checked the width, 96 inches, standard trailer width. I checked my paperwork, found the specifications for my trailer, 96 inches wide, the same. But it looked narrower, felt compressed, like the space itself had been squeezed. I climbed into the trailer, walking carefully between the coils, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The coils looked normal. I touched one, felt cold steel beneath my palm. Solid, real, but when I pulled my hand away, my palm hurt, ached deep in the bones like I'd pressed against something with immense gravitational pull. I shone my light down at the floor. The wood decking was bowing, sagging beneath the coils, the boards bent downward in curves that shouldn't be possible with the load properly distributed. Then I saw them, handprints. Dozens of them pressed into the metal sides of the coils, fingers dug into solid steel like it was clay. Small handprints, child-sized. The steel around each print was darker, tarnished, and the tarnish spread while I watched, growing like mold, like disease, dark patterns spreading across the bright steel surface. I backed out of the trailer, slammed the doors, and tried to secure them, but the latch wouldn't catch. The doors hung crooked, the trailer frame bent, twisted by weight that shouldn't exist. I left them swinging, climbed back in my cab, and pulled out of the Love S, accelerating onto I-65 South, knowing I had to get to Nashville, had to deliver this load, had to make it stop somehow. The weight increased. By Bowling Green, I was down to 35 miles per hour on flat ground, my engine redlined, transmission overheating, coolant boiling in the overflow tank. Steam hissed from under my hood. My brakes were glowing red in my mirrors, and when I touched the brake pedal even lightly, I could feel the resistance, feel how close they were to complete failure. I should have stopped, should have called for help, for a tow truck, for something, but I couldn't stop. Every time I slowed down, the weight increased faster. I could feel it, a direct correlation. Moving meant gaining maybe 50 pounds per mile. Stopping meant gaining hundreds per minute. The handprints appeared on my windshield at mile marker 38. Small hands pressing against the glass from inside my cab, tiny fingers splayed, pushing outward like children trying to escape. No one was there. I was alone in my cab, but the prints appeared and frost formed around them, ice crystals spreading across the glass in patterns that looked like reaching arms. The temperature inside my cab dropped. My breath fogged. The heater was running full blast, but I could see ice forming on the dash, on the steering wheel, on my sleeves. My CB crackled. A voice came through. A child's voice, high and scared. It said my name, James Crawford. Then it said it was cold, said it was heavy, said it hurt. Said please stop, please help, please it hurts so much, the weight hurts, please. More voices joined the first. Dozens of children, all speaking at once, all begging, all crying, all saying the same things. Cold, heavy, hurts, help us, the weight hurts. I understood then. The load wasn't steel coils, had never been steel coils. Or it was, but it was more than that. Something else was there, trapped inside the metal, pressed into it, crushed into it. The handprints, the voices, the weight that accumulated with every mile. I was hauling compressed souls, condensed lives, children who had been melted down and reformed into steel, their mass unchanged but their space reduced to nothing. My trailer doors tore off at mile marker 23. I watched in my mirror as they ripped free, tumbling across the highway behind me, clattering and sparking on the asphalt. The coils were visible now, illuminated by my taillights, and they were moving, rotating slowly. And as they turned, I could see faces pressed into the steel, dozens of faces, hundreds, children's faces, all screaming silently, their mouths open in perfect O's of agony, their eyes reflecting my taillights like animals caught in headlights. The weight was crushing me, my spine compressed, vertebrae grinding together, pain shooting through my back and legs. I looked down at my hands on the steering wheel, and they were sinking into the plastic, my flesh pressing into solid material like I was the one becoming compressed, becoming dense, becoming heavy. My vision blurred, pressure behind my eyes, pressure in my skull, the weight accumulating in me now, not just in the load. Mile marker 12, my front axle broke. I heard the crack, felt my truck lurch forward as the axle gave way, the front end slamming down onto the pavement, grindin'. Metal and asphalt, throwing sparks 40 feet into the air. I was still moving, still being pushed forward by momentum and engine torque and the weight of the impossible load behind me. My steering wheel was useless. My front wheels canted at wrong angles, dragging and screaming. The faces in the steel coils were singing. A lullaby. I recognized it from my own childhood, a song my mother had sung, but the words were wrong, corrupted, about weight and pressure and being compressed into nothing, about how much it hurt to be made dense, to have your atoms pushed closer together, to become heavy enough to sink through the earth. Mile marker 5, I crashed. Not into anything, just crashed. My truck collapsed under the weight, the frame buckling, axles breaking, fifth wheel tearing free from the cab. I felt myself falling, felt my cab compress as the trailer rolled forward, felt tonnage that defied physics settling onto me, crushing me down into my seat, into the floor, into the pavement. I remember the pressure, the immense, impossible pressure of all that weight focused on my body. I remember screaming, though no sound came out because my lungs were too compressed to hold air. I remember my bones cracking, restructuring, my flesh compacting, my mass staying the same but my volume decreasing, becoming denser and denser until I was a small thing, a condensed thing, a thing that weighed far more than it should. When the rescue crews arrived, they found my truck compressed into a cube maybe 6 feet across, the trailer and cab and load all crushed together. They found the steel coils intact, undamaged, still banded and secured. They found no body. Their report said I must have been thrown from the cab, that I was probably dead in a ditch somewhere, that they'd keep searching. But I'm still here, in the steel, pressed into it. I can feel the other ones, the children, all of us compressed together, our masses combined, our weight immense. We're being melted down now, reformed, turned into new steel for new trucks. And when those trucks are loaded, when they pull onto highways, the weight will accumulate again, mile by mile, pound by pound. Until the drivers feel the pressure we felt, until they understand what it means to become dense, to become heavy, to become part of the load they carry. They found handprints on what remained of my steering wheel. Small prints, child-sized, The forensic report noted them but couldn't explain them. They're still looking for James Crawford, still searching ditches and checking hospitals. But I'm not in a ditch. I'm in the steel. In every beam and coil and plate made from that batch. In every vehicle and building and bridge that uses that steel. And I'm getting heavier. We all are. The weight accumulates, always accumulates. And soon someone else will haul us, will feel the resistance increase with every mile, will watch their gauges climb and their suspension compress, will hear the voices of children singing corrupted lullabies through their CB radios. The weight never goes away. It only redistributes, spreads, accumulates in new places, in new drivers, in anyone who gets too close. I'm writing this in the condensation on a windshield, finger by finger, leaving messages in the frost, hoping someone will see and understand before they load the next shipment of steel. Check your weight every mile, every minute, because once it starts accumulating, it never stops. You just get denser and denser until you collapse into something small and heavy and crushed, until you become part of the load, until your handprints appear in steel that should be too hard to mark. I weighed 173 pounds when I started driving. Now I weigh 6 tons, and I'm still getting heavier. Story 5, the radio THAT predicts. My CB radio is telling me about accidents before they happen. 3 minutes ago, it described a jackknifed semi at mile marker 156 on I-70 west of Denver, and I watched it unfold exactly as narrated. The driver losing control in black ice that wasn't there 30 seconds earlier, the trailer swinging wide, the crash barrier crumpling. 2 minutes before that, it told me about a tire blowout on a Walmart truck in the right lane, and I watched the tread separate, and the driver swerve into the median exactly as described. My name is Rachel DeSantos, and my radio is broadcasting a future that I'm driving into, a future that becomes more horrifying with every transmission, a future that just told me I have 17 minutes before my own accident kills me and 4 other people. The radio started talking at 4:47 a.m. on December 2nd, 2023. I've been hauling frozen foods from Kansas City to Grand Junction, a run I'd made probably 30 times in my 6 years with Transcold Logistics. I was running through the Colorado mountains on I-70, the highway mostly empty at this hour, just me and scattered overnight truckers and the occasional car. My CB had been quiet, the usual dead air of early morning when everyone's tired and no one feels like talking. Then it spoke, not another driver, not dispatch. A voice I didn't recognize, flat and mechanical like a text-to-speech program, but with inflections that suggested emotion buried beneath the monotone. It said that in 2 minutes and 43 seconds, at mile marker 143, a deer would run into the westbound lanes from the north shoulder, and a red Ford F-150 would swerve to avoid it, overcorrecting and rolling 3 times before coming to rest upside down in the median. I was at mile marker 140. I slowed down, watching, telling myself this was a joke, someone screwing around on channel 19, but unable to shake the specificity of the prediction. 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Mile marker 143. Red Ford F-150. I counted the seconds, watching the markers pass. 141. 142. At 143, exactly as my watch hit the predicted time, a deer bounded from the darkness on the north side, its eyes reflecting my headlights, and a red Ford pickup I hadn't even known was ahead of me swerved violently, fishtailed, and began rolling, metal crunching and glass exploding, the truck spinning in graceful slow motion before crashing upside down into the median exactly as the radio had described. I stopped, called 911, tried to help, but the driver was already gone, his neck bent at an angle that left no doubt. I sat on the snowy shoulder, shaking, talking to state troopers who arrived with lights and questions, giving my statement, explaining that I'd seen it happen but couldn't prevent it. They asked if I'd heard anything on the radio beforehand. I lied, said no, said nothing. Because how do you explain a CB radio that predicts fatal accidents? I got back on the road 30 minutes later, clearance from the troopers to continue, and the radio spoke again immediately. It said that in 4 minutes and 18 seconds at mile marker 156, a westbound Schneider truck would jackknife in unexpected black ice. It described the impact in detail, the angle of the skid, the way the trailer would swing across both lanes, the crash barrier sections that would tear free, the smell of diesel fuel leaking from a ruptured tank. I wanted to turn off the radio, reached for the power knob. My hand stopped 6 inches away, frozen, unable to move closer. Something prevented me. Not physical force, but certainty, knowledge that turning off the radio wouldn't stop the predictions, would only leave me blind to what was coming. I needed to hear, needed to know. Even though knowing was horror, ignorance was worse. Mile marker 156 came up. I'd slowed to 40, my flashers on, watching for ice. The road looked clear, dry pavement. No weather. Then like a switch flipped, ice appeared, black and glossy, covering both lanes in a patch maybe 50 yards long. The Schneider truck ahead of me hit it and began sliding, the trailer swinging exactly as the radio had described, jackknifing across the highway, the crash barrier tearing free with shrieking metal sounds. I stopped just short of the wreckage, my heart slamming, my hands locked on the steering wheel. This time I didn't stop to help. Couldn't. The radio was already describing the next incident. 7 minutes. Mile marker 163. A blue Honda Civic would cross the median, tires having blown simultaneously on both the left side, the car spinning into oncoming traffic, hitting a gasoline tanker that would jackknife and rupture, spilling fuel but not igniting, not yet. I drove past mile marker 156 while other trucks stopped to help the Schneider driver. I kept going, accelerating, watching my speedometer climb to 75, faster than safe in mountains at night, but the radio kept talking, kept predicting, and every prediction came true. The blue Honda, the gasoline tanker, mile marker 163 exactly as described. I passed the wreckage 3 minutes after it happened. Emergency vehicles just arriving, the spilled gasoline a dark river across the highway, reflecting red and blue lights. The predictions came faster. Every few minutes another one, a rock slide at mile marker 178, an engine fire in a UPS truck at 184. A medical emergency, a driver having a heart attack at mile marker 191, his truck drifting across lanes before someone else forced it to stop. Every prediction perfect, every detail exact, and I was driving through them all, weaving through disaster, watching the future unfold into now. The radio told me about my own accident at mile marker 203. 17 minutes, it said. At 6:15 a.m. exactly, my reefer unit would fail, the refrigerant line rupturing and filling my cab with gas. I would lose consciousness. My truck would drift left, crossing the median, entering the eastbound lanes. A family in a minivan would swerve to avoid me. They would lose control. The van would roll, and all 4 occupants would die. My truck would hit a rock face, the impact killing me instantly when the steering column crushed my chest. I was at mile marker 194, 17 minutes until my death. 17 minutes to figure out how to change a future that had been perfectly accurate for every other prediction. I grabbed my CB microphone, keyed it, and broadcast on channel 19, warning everyone about my reefer unit, telling them to stay clear of a trans-cold logistics truck, giving my location and direction. No one responded. I tried again. Silence. Like I wasn't really transmitting, or like everyone else had decided to ignore me, to let the future happen as predicted. I pulled over at mile marker 195, 8 miles before the predicted crash site, and shut down my engine. If I didn't drive, I couldn't crash. Simple logic. I sat there, engine off, reefer unit still running behind me, refrigerant flowing through lines that would rupture in 14 minutes at mile marker 203, except I wouldn't be at mile marker 203. I'd be here, stopped, safe. The radio laughed. Not speech but actual laughter, mechanical and wrong. Then it said that stopping wouldn't help, that the future was fixed, that mile marker 203 was where Rachel DeSantos died, and physics would bend to make it true. It said I would start driving again. Had to start driving again. Because the accident was already happening, was always happening, would always happen. I tried to stay stopped, tried to keep my hands off the keys. But my reefer unit began screaming, the compressor sound changing, becoming labored, whining, and I knew the refrigerant line was failing earlier than predicted, failing now, the rupture beginning. White gas began seeping into my cab through the vents, tasteless, odorless, but I could feel it, feel the oxygen depleting, feel my head getting light. I started the engine, opened my windows, and drove, accelerating back onto I-70, fresh air rushing in, clearing the gas, keeping me conscious. But I was driving toward mile marker 203. The radio confirmed it, counting down. 11 minutes. 10. 9. I tried taking an exit. At mile marker 198, an off-ramp appeared, and I signaled, began slowing. But the exit vanished as I approached, the ramp turning into solid rock face, the exit that had been there disappearing like it had never existed. I swerved back onto the highway, my trailer swaying, and the radio laughed again, that mechanical sound that might have been human once but had been distorted into something else. Mile marker 200, 6 minutes. I could see the sun beginning to rise ahead, painting the mountains in red and gold, beautiful and indifferent. My reefer unit was still running, but the sound was worse, grinding and screeching, the refrigerant line holding but barely. I thought about driving faster, trying to push past mile marker 203 before the predicted time, but the radio said that wouldn't work either, said the timeline was fixed, said 6:15 a.m. at mile marker 203 was an absolute point, unchangeable. Mile marker 201, 4 minutes. I saw the minivan. It was ahead of me in the eastbound lanes, traveling the opposite direction, and I recognized it from the radio's description. Silver Honda Odyssey, family of 4, 2 adults in front, 2 children in back, car seats visible through the rear window. They passed me, heading east while I headed west, and I knew that in 4 minutes I'd cross into their lanes, and they'd swerve, and all of them would die because of me. I couldn't let that happen. Wouldn't. The radio said the future was fixed, but I didn't believe in fixed futures, didn't believe in fate, didn't believe that 4 people had to die because a mechanical voice on a CB radio said so. I grabbed my microphone and broadcast again, this time giving specific details about the minivan, warning them by description, begging them to take the next exit to stop, to get off the highway. The radio interrupted my transmission, its voice overlaying mine, saying this had been tried before, saying previous versions of Rachel DeSantos had warned previous versions of the family, saying it never worked, saying the accident always happened, always would happen, because I wasn't the first to receive these predictions and wouldn't be the last. Mile marker 202, 2 minutes. My reefer unit exploded. Not the gentle rupture the radio had described, but a violent detonation, the compressor bursting with a bang that shook my whole truck. White gas flooded my cab instantly, too much to vent through the open windows, filling my lungs, stealing oxygen. I gasped, inhaled refrigerant, felt my vision tunnel. My hands went numb on the steering wheel. My foot slipped off the accelerator. The truck began drifting left. I couldn't stop it, couldn't steer, could barely think. The white line marking the median approached, passed beneath my hood. I was crossing over, entering eastbound lanes exactly as predicted. Through the white haze of gas and fading consciousness, I saw the minivan approaching, saw brake lights flare red, saw it swerve. They didn't roll immediately. The driver was good. Compensated, almost regained control. For a moment, I thought maybe the prediction was wrong, maybe the future could change, maybe the family would survive. Then their front tire blew, the rubber exploding, and the van began rolling, tumbling across the median, metal crunching, glass shattering, children screaming. My truck hit the rock face. I felt the impact, felt the steering column punch through my chest, felt ribs crack and lungs puncture. The pain was immense and distant simultaneously, happening to me and to someone else. I tasted blood. My vision went red, then gray, then dark. But I didn't die, should have. The radio had said instantly, said the impact would kill me instantly, but I was still conscious, still breathing somehow despite the steering column embedded in my chest, still aware. I could hear sirens approaching. Could hear voices, people running, people screaming about the minivan, about the family, about 4 bodies in the wreckage. The radio crackled. The voice said this wasn't the end. Said I'd wake up in a hospital in 3 days with injuries that should have been fatal. Said I'd recover over 6 months. Said I'd return to driving. Said I'd be hauling frozen foods on December 2nd, 2023. On I-70 through Colorado, said my CB radio would start making predictions at 4:47 a.m. I wanted to argue to say that was impossible, but I noticed things. The way the emergency responders moved around my truck without seeing me. The way their voices sounded muffled and distant even though they were right outside my windows. The way my blood wasn't pooling beneath me but floating, suspended in air, drops hanging motionless like I existed outside of normal time. I looked at my steering wheel. The CB microphone hung from its coil cord, swaying gently, and on the radio's display I saw numbers, 000004. A countdown, 4 seconds, 3, 2. At 0, everything reset. The sun dropped back below the horizon. Mile marker 203 moved backward in my vision, retreating. The minivan appeared ahead of me, whole and undamaged, traveling east. My reefer unit was running normally. My chest was uninjured, no steering column, no blood. The clock on my dash showed 4:47 a.m. My CB radio crackled to life. A voice I didn't recognize, flat and mechanical like a text-to-speech program, but with inflections that suggested emotion buried beneath the monotone. It said that in 2 minutes and 43 seconds, at mile marker 143, a deer would run into the westbound lanes from the north shoulder. and a red Ford F-150 would swerve to avoid it, overcorrecting and rolling 3 times. I was at mile marker 140. Again, still, always, the loop had begun again, or had never ended, or had always been running, I didn't know which. Didn't matter. The radio was predicting and I was driving, and mile marker 203 was ahead, waiting, with a minivan and a family of 4 and my death that wouldn't stick. I've lived this loop 63 times now. I know because I count the crashes, the predictions, the deaths. Each time I try something different, different speeds, different routes, turning off the reefer unit before it can rupture. Warning the family earlier, later, not at all, nothing changes. The accidents happen exactly as predicted. The minivan rolls, the family dies, I crash. The countdown reaches 0. And I'm back at 4:47 a.m. Mile marker 140, listening to the radio describe a deer and a red F-150. The other predictions are always the same. Same accidents, same mile markers, same times, but my own prediction changes slightly each loop. Sometimes it's 17 minutes, sometimes 23, once it was 47. The details change too. Sometimes the reefer unit ruptures, sometimes the brakes fail, sometimes a tire blows, but the outcome is always identical. Mile marker 203, the minivan, 4 deaths. Mine that doesn't stick. I'm starting to recognize some of the other accidents. The Schneider truck driver looks familiar now, like I've seen his face before, like maybe he's also looping, also dying and resetting. The blue Honda driver sometimes waves at me as we pass. The UPS truck with the engine fire appears in exactly the same state of decay each time, like it's been burning for eternity. The radio tells me I'll loop forever, that this stretch of I-70 is caught in recursion, that December 2nd, 2023 repeats infinitely for everyone on this highway, that we're all dying and resetting and dying again, living the same hours over and over. It tells me the minivan family is also looping, that they die and wake up earlier that morning and drive toward me again, that they know what's coming but can't stop it. I've tried to warn them 63 times. They never listen, or they can't hear me, or they hear me every time and nothing changes. I don't know anymore. The loops blur together. Sometimes I'm not sure which loop I'm in, whether this is the first time or the 1000th. The radio is talking no. W describing the deer. The F-150. I'm approaching mile marker 143. I could slow down, but I've tried that 30 times. The accident happens anyway, just differently. The deer appears regardless. The truck rolls regardless. Mile marker 203 is ahead. Always ahead. My death is waiting there, the death that won't take, the death that resets everything. And the family in the minivan is driving toward me, has been driving toward me forever, will drive toward me always. The radio says this is loop number 64, says I'll reach 100 loops soon, says at loop 100 something changes, won't tell me what, just says it changes, says I'll understand then, says everyone understands at loop 100. I'm at mile marker 195. The reefer unit is starting to whine. 12 minutes until I die. 12 minutes until I wake up at mile marker 140 and hear the predictions begin again. The radio is always right. That's what I've learned. The future is fixed and I'm caught in it, and the predictions will continue until the highway decides to let me go. If it ever does. Story 6, the passenger who multiplies. There's a hitchhiker in my passenger seat, and every time I check my mirror, there are more of him in the sleeper berth behind me. Started with one at mile marker 47 on Route 50 through Nevada. Now there are 7. 7 identical copies of the same man, all sitting perfectly still, all staring at the back of my head with unblinking eyes, all breathing in perfect unison. My name is Thomas Vega, and I picked up a hitchhiker who won't leave and won't stop copying himself, and I'm running out of space in my cab, and I don't know what happens when the copies fill every available inch. I don't think I want to find out. He appeared in my headlights at 2:33 a.m. on October 27, 2023. Thumb out, standing on the shoulder of the loneliest highway in America, wearing a gray jacket and jeans and a baseball cap pulled low. I should have passed him, should have kept driving. I haul auto parts from Sacramento to Kansas City, a boring run through empty desert, and I don't pick up hitchhikers, haven't in 20 years of driving, but something made me stop. Not kindness, not sympathy. Something else, compulsion. Like my foot hit the brake without my permission, like my truck pulled over without me deciding to stop. He climbed in without asking, opened the passenger door and slid into the seat, and said thank you in a voice that was perfectly normal, perfectly human, perfectly wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. Up close, his face was ordinary. Maybe 40 years old, stubble, tired eyes, forgettable features, the kind of face you'd pass in a grocery store and immediately forget. He didn't smell like anything. Not sweat, not cologne, not the road, nothing. Like he was an absence of smell rather than a source of it. I asked where he was headed. He said east. I said I was going to Kansas City. He said that would be fine. We drove in silence for 10 miles, him staring straight ahead through the windshield, me getting increasingly uncomfortable with the lack of conversation. Most hitchhikers talk. They're grateful or storytellers or crazy, but they talk. This one just sat, his hands folded in his lap, his breathing so quiet I could barely hear it. At mile marker 58, I glanced in my rearview mirror to check the trailer, and there was someone in my sleeper berth. Another man, same gray jacket, same baseball cap, same face, sitting on my bunk staring at the back of my head. I jerked the wheel in surprise, the truck swerving, and the hitchhiker in my passenger seat said, "Drive carefully," in that perfectly normal, perfectly wrong voice. I pulled over again, yanked my air brakes, and twisted to look behind me. The copy sat there, real and solid, breathing. I looked at the passenger seat. The original sat there, also real, also breathing. Both identical, both impossible. I demanded to know what was happening, my voice shrill with panic. But the passenger just smiled, a small expression that didn't reach his eyes, and said I'd agreed to give him a ride, and he was multiplying, and I should keep driving unless I wanted more to appear faster. I should have kicked him out. Both of him, all of him. Should have called the police. Should have done anything except what I did, which was put the truck back in gear and drive, because the alternative was admitting that something impossible was happening, and my brain refused to process impossible things without shattering. At mile marker 73, there were 3, the passenger, 2 in the sleeper, all identical, all staring at me with the same expression, neutral and patient and inhuman. At mile marker 89, there were 4. At 104, 5. They were appearing faster, the interval between copies decreasing. I calculated the rate. 1 new copy every 15 miles at first, then every 14, then 13. I tried talking to them, asked questions. What are you? Why are you doing T? His, how do I make it stop? The original, the one in my passenger seat, answered each question the same way. Keep driving. That was all. Keep driving. Like it was a mantra, like it meant something beyond the literal words, like if I just kept driving eventually there would be an answer. By mile marker 130, there were 6 copies, and my cab was getting crowded. They didn't need much space individually, but 6 identical men in a sleeper berth meant for one made for cramped conditions. They sat shoulder to shoulder, packed together like sardines, their knees touching, their breathing synchronized so perfectly it sounded like one person breathing very loudly. I needed fuel, pulled into a Love's in Ely, Nevada, my cab full of copies, trying to figure out how to fuel up without anyone seeing the 6 identical men in my truck. But when the fuel island attendant walked past, she didn't look twice. Didn't notice the copies pressed against my windows. Didn't react at all, like they weren't there, like only I could see them. I tested this theory, opened my passenger door while the attendant was nearby, letting her see inside. She glanced over, waved, went back to her work. The copies sat there in plain view, 6 identical men breathing in unison, and she saw nothing. I asked her directly, "Do you see anyone in my truck?" She looked confused, said just me, asked if I was feeling okay. The copies didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't speak except for the original in the passenger seat, who occasionally said, "Keep driving." They didn't move much either, just small adjustments of posture, always in perfect synchronization, all 6 of them shifting weight at the same moment. Their eyes never closed, never blinked, just stared at the back of my head, unblinking and patient. Mile marker 178, there were 7 copies. My sleeper berth was completely full, the men packed so tightly they'd been forced into positions that looked uncomfortable but which none of them complained about. They sat with limbs intertwined, arms over shoulders, legs crossed over legs, like a puzzle of human bodies fitted together with geometric precision. The air in my cab was getting thin. 7 men breathing in unison consumed a lot of oxygen, and despite running my vents on high, I was getting lightheaded, my vision spotting, my thoughts fuzzy. The original copy, the passenger, finally spoke more than his mantra. He said that when the cab was full, when there was no more room for copies, the process would complete. I asked what process. He said integration. I asked what that meant. He smiled again, that expression that never reached his eyes, and said I'd understand when it happened, and it would happen soon, maybe another 50 miles, maybe less. I calculated the space remaining in my cab. The passenger seat held 1. The sleeper held 7, crammed so tightly they could barely breathe. The floor space held maybe 2 more if they laid down. That meant 10 total before the cab was completely full. I was at 7. 3 more copies until whatever integration meant happened. I tried to escape them. At mile marker 203, I pulled over, climbed out, and ran. Just ran into the Nevada desert, abandoning my truck, my load, everything. I sprinted maybe 200 yards, my boots slipping in sand, my breath burning in my throat. When I turned back, the truck was directly behind me. Not where I'd left it on the highway, but here in the desert, 20 feet away, engine idling, the copies visible through the windows, watching me. I ran again. Same result. The truck followed, appearing closer each time I looked back, until finally I gave up and climbed back into the cab. The original said, "Keep driving," and I did, because what else could I do? The truck wouldn't let me leave. The copies wouldn't let me stop, and the integration was coming 3 copies away. Mile marker 241, copy number 8 appeared. It materialized in the passenger footwell, cramped and folded, its knees against its chest, its head tucked down. The breathing rhythm didn't change. Now 8 men breathing as one, the sound loud enough to drown out my engine, to vibrate through the cab, to make my ribs ache with sympathetic resonance. I begged the original to stop, offered money, offered anything. He said it wasn't about payment, wasn't about deals, was just about the process, about the integration, about the completion. Said I'd chosen to stop for him, had chosen to open the door, had chosen to let him in, and choices had consequences, and this was mine. Mile marker 289, copy number 9 appeared on my lap. Just materialized there, sitting on top of me, his weight pressing down, his body partially intersecting mine in ways that should have been impossible, our flesh overlapping, his molecules mixing with my molecules. I felt him inside me, felt his breathing become my breathing, felt his heartbeat sync with my heartbeat. It was violation and intimacy simultaneously, wrong and inevitable. I cowl. Didn't steer properly with a copy on my lap. The truck drifted, crossed the center line, and an oncoming car blared its horn and swerved. The copy didn't move, didn't react. Just sat there, breathing my breaths, his face inches from mine, his eyes staring into my eyes. I looked into those eyes and saw myself reflected, but wrong, changed, my face subtly different, my features rearranged. Mile marker 334, the 10th copy appeared. It filled the last space, the driver's footwell, cramming itself around the pedals, its head near my ankles, its body contorted to fit the small space. The cab was full. 10 identical men, all breathing in perfect unison, all staring at various parts of me, all waiting. The original, the passenger, said, "Integration begins now." All 10 copies started melting. Not with heat, not like wax, but their forms becoming fluid, their flesh turning to liquid, gray and thick like wet clay. They dripped onto the seats, onto the floor, onto me, cold and viscous, pooling and spreading. I tried to wipe it off, but it stuck to my skin, absorbed through it, seeping into my pores, into my bloodstream. I felt them entering me. All 10 copies, their liquefied forms flowing into my body, filling spaces I didn't know existed, expanding me from the inside. My skin stretched. My bones ached. My organs shifted position, making room, accommodating the additional mass. The original spoke through my mouth, his voice and my voice overlapping. He said integration meant combination, meant merging, meant I was becoming us, we were becoming one. He needed a vessel, and I'd volunteered by stopping. I tried to argue, tried to say I hadn't volunteered, but he said the stopping was voluntary, the door opening was voluntary, and voluntary actions were consent enough. My reflection in the rearview mirror changed. My face was still mine, but also his, the features blending, my eyes becoming his eyes, my mouth forming his smile. I raised my hand, and it moved the way he would have moved it, the gesture unfamiliar and alien but originating from my own muscles. By mile marker 380, I couldn't tell where I ended and he began. The integration was complete. 10 copies absorbed, dissolved into my flesh, our minds merged into something that was both and neither. I was still Thomas Vega, but I was also the hitchhiker, was also all 10 copies, was also something new, something combined. The truck stopped on its own, engine off, lights off. We sat in darkness on the shoulder of Route 50, the loneliest highway in America, and waited, for what I didn't entirely know. Part of me, the Thomas part, wanted to run to escape, to get help. Part of me, the hitchhiker part, knew running was pointless, knew I was already caught, already changed. Headlights approached from the west. A truck, big rig, hauling freight. It slowed as it neared us. I stood on the shoulder in the darkness, thumb out, wearing a gray jacket and jeans and a baseball cap pulled low. The truck pulled over. The driver, a woman maybe 50 years old, leaned across and opened the passenger door. I climbed in. She asked where I was headed. I said east. She said she was going to Denver. I said that would be fine. We drove in silence for 10 miles. Then I felt the first copy appear in her sleeper berth, and I smiled, the expression not quite reaching my eyes, and said in a perfectly normal, perfectly wrong voice, "Keep driving." The multiplication had begun again. But this time, I was the source. This time, I was the one who would fill her cab with copies, who would integrate, who would become we, who would stand on another highway with my thumb out waiting for the next driver foolish enough to stop. Route 50 stretches across Nevada, lonely and dark, and there are more of me now standing on different shoulders at different mile markers, all wearing gray jackets and baseball caps, all waiting with patient hunger for someone to open a door. The integration spreads. Each driver becomes us. Each us becomes many. The copies multiply, the cabs fill, the integration completes, and the hitchhikers increase. If you see someone on Route 50 at night, thumb out, alone on the loneliest highway in America, don't stop. Don't open your door. Don't agree to give them a ride. Because the choice is voluntary, and voluntary is consent, and consent means integration. I've filled 43 trucks now. 43 drivers have become we. 43 times I've stood on the shoulder and multiplied in cramped cabs and merged into new flesh. The Thomas part of me is getting smaller, quieter, drowning in the we. Soon there will only be we. No Thomas, no individuals, just copies and integration and trucks full of the same face breathing in unison. Keep driving, but don't stop for me. Whatever you do, don't stop. Story 7. The truck stopped THATDEVOURS. The Flying J at exit 247 on I-80 has eaten 6 of my hours, and I've only been inside for 12 minutes. My name is Jennifer Moore, and I stopped for fuel. India bathroom break, and when I came back outside, my truck said I'd been parked for 6 hours and 17 minutes. My reefer unit had burned through half a tank running to maintain temperature, and my dispatcher had left 23 increasingly frantic voicemails asking where I was. But I was only inside for 12 minutes. I counted them, watched the clock on my phone. 12 minutes that somehow became 6 hours outside these walls, and now the exit back to the highway is gone. The parking lot extends into fog that smells like diesel and decay. And there are other drivers here, dozens of them walking in circles, checking their watches, their faces marked with growing horror as they realize they're losing time to something they can't see or fight. I pulled off I-80 at 3:47 p.m. on September 15, 2023. I've been hauling refrigerated produce from Fresno to Chicago, a straightforward run I'd made maybe a dozen times. The truck stop looked normal from the highway, standard Flying J fuel pumps, restaurant, travel store. The sign said exit 247 Flying J, all trucker services. Nothing unusual. Nothing suggesting this place was a trap that 8 hours and left drivers stranded in time that moved wrong. I pulled up to the diesel pumps, swiped my fleet card, started fueling. My phone showed 3:51 p.m. I went inside to use the bathroom, maybe grab a coffee, normal truck stop routine. The interior looked right, bright fluorescent lights, aisles of road snacks and trucker supplies, a subway counter, showers in the back, a few other customers browsing, paying for fuel, the usual scene. The bathroom was clean. I was in and out in maybe 4 minutes. Grabbed a large coffee black from the self-serve station. Paid at the counter, small talk with the cashier about weather and traffic. She seemed normal, human, real. Her name tag said Sandra, and she smiled when she gave me my receipt, said drive safe, all the standard pleasantries. Nothing weird, nothing wrong. I walked back outside. My truck sat at the pump where I'd left it, fuel nozzle hanging back on the pump, transaction complete. But the sky was wrong. When I'd gone inside, it had been mid-afternoon, sun high, maybe a few clouds. Now it was nearly dark, the sun a red smear on the western horizon, twilight settling over the parking lot. I checked my phone. 10:04 p.m. I'd been inside for 12 minutes. My phone had logged the time. I'd gone in at 3:51 p.m., come out at 4:03 p.m. according to my own count. But the outside world said 10:04 p.m. 6 hours and 13 minutes of time that I hadn't experienced, hadn't lived, that had passed while I'd been inside for 12 minutes. My dispatcher had been trying to reach me. 23 missed calls. Voicemails progressing from curious to concerned to angry to panicked. The first one, timestamped 4:15 p.m., asked if I was making good time. The fifth one, 5:47 p.m., asked why I wasn't responding. The 15th one, 8:32 p.m., said they'd called Highway Patrol, were checking hospitals, feared the worst. The 23rd one, 10. 01 p.m. said if I was alive, I'd better have a damn good explanation. I tried to call back. The phone rang but didn't connect, just endless ringing like the dispatcher's phone was somewhere far away, in a place phone signals couldn't reach. I tried 911, same result, ringing into void. I tried my brother, my ex-husband, anyone. Every call rang forever without connecting. I looked around the parking lot. Other trucks were parked in the spaces, dozens of them, and drivers were standing beside their cabs, checking phones, looking confused and scared. I walked over to the nearest one, a man maybe 60, beard gone gray, wearing a Walmart logistics jacket. I asked if he was having problems with time. He stared at me with eyes that had seen too much, and he said he'd stopped for fuel 8 hours ago, had been inside for 10 minutes, came out to find his entire day gone. Another driver, a woman in her 30s, said she'd stopped yesterday afternoon, had been inside for 15 minutes, came out to find it was morning again, but the wrong morning 3 days later. She'd lost 3 days to 15 minutes. Her load of medical supplies had expired, gone bad, worthless. She'd tried to leave, but the exit was gone, replaced by fog and parking lot that extended forever. I walked toward where the exit should be. The ramp back to I-80 the way I'd entered maybe an hour ago real time, 6 hours ago according to the rest of the world. The ramp was gone. The parking lot just continued into thick fog, white and impenetrable, smelling like diesel exhaust and something organic, something rotting. I walked into the fog, 20 steps, 30, 50. The truck stopped, never got farther away. When I looked back, it was the same distance behind me as when I'd started. I tried driving out, got in my truck, started the engine, and drove toward the fog, my headlights cutting through it weakly. I drove for what felt key 10 minutes, my speedometer showing 20 miles per hour, meaning I should have covered 3 or 4 miles. But when I looked back, the truck stop was right there, 50 feet behind me, its lights bright in the darkness that had fallen completely now. Other drivers had tried too. I could see their tracks in the parking lot, tire marks going in circles, loops within loops, all of them leading back to the building at the center. The Flying J sat in its pool of fluorescent light like a spider in a web, and we were all caught, circling it, unable to escape. I talked to more drivers, 17 of them all trapped, all losing time. They arrived at different times, lost different amounts of time, but all shared the same story. Went inside, came out. Hours or days had passed. Exit was gone. Phones didn't work properly. Time moved wrong here, faster outside than inside, or maybe slower inside than outside, the relationship inverted and toxic. One driver, a man named Marcus, who'd been trapped for what he said was 3 days real time, 5 days according to the outside world, had started keeping notes. He timed his trips inside the building. 7 trips. Each time he spent exactly 10 minutes inside by his watch. Each time he came out to find hours had passed outside, but the ratio wasn't consistent. First trip, 10 minutes inside, 2 hours outside. Second trip, 10 minutes inside, 4 hours outside. Third trip, 10 minutes inside, 8 hours outside. The time dilation was accelerating, doubling with each visit. I asked why he kept going inside. He said you had to. Said the truck stop pulled you. Said you'd feel the need to use the bathroom, to get food, to check on something, and you'd go inside even knowing you'd lose more time, even knowing each trip made it worse. Said he'd tried to resist on his 7th trip, had sat in his cab for what felt like hours fighting the compulsion, but eventually the need became overwhelming and he went in, and when he came out another 8 hours had passed. He said tomorrow he'd have to go in again. Said the need was building already, the pull of the building growing stronger. Said the 8th trip would cost him 16 hours. The 9th, 32. The 10th, 64. He did the math, calculated that by his 15th trip he'd lose more than a year of outside time to 10 minutes inside. By his 20th trip, decades would pass. By his 25th, centuries. I felt it too. Even though I'd only made 1 trip inside, only lost 6 hours, I could feel the pull already, a gentle pressure in my bladder, a slight hunger, a sense that I needed something from inside the building. I fought it, stayed in my truck, waited, watched other drivers succumb, watched them walk to the entrance like sleepwalkers, watched them disappear through the automatic doors. I timed them. A man in a Schneider truck went inside. I counted seconds on my watch. He was inside for 8 minutes 43 seconds. When he came back out, he'd aged, not dramatically but visibly, more gray in his hair. Deeper lines around his eyes. He looked at his phone and screamed, a sound of pure existential horror. I asked him later how long he'd lost. He said 19 hours, his 2nd trip inside. Tomorrow would cost 38. The cashier, Sandra, came outside during what my watch said was 2:17 a.m. She walked through the parking lot, smiling, greeting drivers by name even though she shouldn't know their names, asking if they needed anything from inside. Several drivers followed her back in. They were inside for varying amounts of time, between 6 and 12 minutes by my count. When they emerged, days had passed. One driver, an older woman, came out and collapsed, her body unable to handle the sudden time displacement. Other drivers tried to help, but she was gone. Her heart stopped, her system shocked by losing 72 hours to 11 minutes inside. Sandra stood in the doorway, still smiling, and said the building needed time, needed to feed, needed to consume the minutes and hours and days from drivers who stopped here. Said it had always been hungry, would always be hungry, and we'd all feed it eventually, all go inside enough times that we'd lose years, decades, lifetimes. Said some drivers had been trapped here for what felt like weeks but was actually years. Their families giving up searching, their companies forgetting them, their lives outside these walls continuing without them. I tried ramming the fog barrier with my truck, backed up, accelerated to 40 miles per hour, and drove straight into the white wall where the exit should be. The impact was like hitting something solid, like driving into a wall of concrete, my truck stopping instantly, airbags deploying, the crash throwing me against my seatbelt hard enough to bruise. But when I got out to check the damage, my truck was fine, unharmed, parked exactly where it had been before I'd tried ramming the fog. Like the attempt had Neve. R happened, like reality had reset, like the truck stop wouldn't allow escape even by force. The pull was getting stronger. I needed to pee, needed food, needed to go inside. I tried drinking from my water bottle to ease the thirst, but it didn't help. The need was psychological, not physical. The building wanted me inside, wanted to feed, wanted to take more of my time. I lasted until what my watch said was 6:45 a.m., 15 hours after my first trip inside. The need became unbearable, overwhelming, a compulsion I couldn't fight anymore. I walked to the entrance, hating myself, knowing what would happen but unable to stop. The automatic doors slid open. I went inside. The interior looked the same. Bright lights, aisles of snacks, Sandra behind the counter, smiling. I went to the bathroom, quick as I could, grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler. Paid. Sandra said I'd been a good customer, said the building appreciated me, said it would see me again soon. I was inside for 9 minutes. When I came outside, everything had changed. The other trucks were still there, but they looked older, rust on some of the panels, flat tires, dust covering the windshields. I checked my phone. October 3rd, 2023. I'd lost 18 days to 9 minutes. 18 days of my life gone, skipped, never experienced. My reefer unit had run out of fuel days ago. The produce in my trailer was rotted, liquid, the smell overwhelming when I opened the doors. My dispatcher had stopped calling. The voicemails ended at September 20th, the last one saying they were writing off the truck and load as a total loss, that I was fired if I ever showed up again, that they'd filed an insurance claim. Other drivers emerged from their trucks. Some looked the same. Others had aged, their faces older, their bodies slower. I asked Marcus how long it had been for him. He said he'd lost 2 months to his 8th trip inside, was going in again today, would lose 4 months to his 9th trip. He'd calculated that he'd be trapped here for subjective years, losing objective decades, until eventually one trip inside would cost him more time than he had left, and he'd come out to find centuries had passed, everyone he knew long dead, the world changed beyond recognition. I'm writing this on paper from the truck stop store using a pen from my truck, recording what's happening here. The pull is building again. I'll have to go inside soon, my 3rd trip. If the pattern holds, I'll lose maybe 72 hours, 3 days, then 6 days, then 12. The doubling continues, each trip costing more, the acceleration inevitable. There are drivers here who have been trapped for months real time, years outside time. They're old now, ancient, their bodies worn by time they didn't live through, aged by hours that passed while they were inside for minutes. Some of them have stopped fighting. They go inside multiple times a day, losing weeks each trip, their lives burning away, consumed by a truck stop that feeds on time. Sandra says everyone pays the toll eventually. Says time is the only currency here, the only thing the building wants, the only thing it takes. Says by our 100th trip inside, we'll have lost everything, everyone, every life we had outside these walls. Says we'll be ghosts then, echoes of drivers who stopped for fuel and never really left. I'm going inside again. The need is too strong. I've been fighting it for what feels like 2 days, though I'm scared to check my phone to see how much time has passed. I know this trip will cost me. Know the next will cost more. No, eventually I'll lose everything to this place. If you see a flying J at exit 247 on I-80, drive past. Don't stop. Don't pull off. Don't even slow down. The fuel is poisoned with time and the building is hungry, and once you stop, you'll never really leave. You'll just keep going inside, keep losing hours and days and years, keep feeding it until there's nothing left of you but dust and memory. Sandra's calling my name now, saying the building is waiting, saying it's time for my third trip, saying I'll only lose a few days this time, and isn't that reasonable, isn't that fair, isn't that a small price to pay for the gift of knowing exactly how much time you have left? I'm walking toward the entrance now. The automatic doors are opening. I can see Sandra smiling behind the counter. I'm going inside. I'll be back out in 10 minutes. I'll let you know how much time I lost. If anyone ever finds this. Story 8, The Load That Whispers. My cargo is teaching me things. Secrets. Names of people I've never met. Coordinates to places that don't appear on maps. Mathematical equations I don't understand but feel are important, fundamental, like they describe the architecture of reality itself. My name is Daniel Reeves, and I picked up 48 wooden crates from a warehouse outside Roswell, New Mexico, headed for a research facility in Bethesda, Maryland, and the crates are whispering, and the whys. Pers are knowledge, vast and terrible knowledge that's filling my head faster than I can process it. And I think the knowledge is changing me, restructuring my brain, turning me into something that can contain truths humans weren't meant to hold. The whispers started at mile marker 89 on Route 285 north of Roswell at 11:47 p.m. on July 4, 2023. I'd loaded the crates at a facility with no signs, no company name, just a warehouse with security that checked my credentials 3 times before letting me back my trailer to the loading dock. The men who loaded the crates wore hazmat suits. They wouldn't speak to me, wouldn't answer questions. Just loaded 48 wooden crates, each about 3 feet cubed, marked with symbols I didn't recognize, bound with metal straps that looked government issue. The paperwork said research materials fragile climate controlled. The payment was $35,000 for a single cross-country run. Enough money to make me not ask questions, enough to make me ignore the hazmat suits and the armed guards, and the way the men who loaded the crates moved like they were scared of the cargo, like they were relieved to have it leaving, like they pitied me for being the driver who'd take it. The first whisper was a name, Michael Torrens. Just the name spoken in my ear in a voice that was male and female and neither, a voice that came from inside my head rather than from outside. I jumped, looked around the cab, checked the sleeper berth. Empty. I was alone, but the voice had been real, clear as day, Michael Torrens. I didn't know anyone named Michael Torrens. Googled it on my phone at the next rest stop. Found nothing relevant. Just random people with that name, none of them connected to me, none of them significant. But the whisper had sounded important, urgent, like Michael Torrens was someone I needed to remember. The second whisper was coordinates. 38, 1,331 degrees N, 107, 8,246 degrees W. The numbers came in that same voice, precise and inhuman, spoken directly into my brain. I entered them into my GPS. They pointed to a location in the Colorado mountains, middle of nowhere, no town, no roads, just wilderness. I noted them down, unclear why, feeling compelled to record every whisper even though I didn't understand them. By Albuquerque, I'd received 17 whispers, names, coordinates, dates. The dates were specific: November 14, 1956, March 3, 1989, September 11, 2001. Some I recognized as historically significant, others meant nothing to me. The whispers came every few minutes, regular as breathing, filling my head with information I hadn't asked for and couldn't refuse. The knowledge felt different than normal learning. It wasn't like memorizing facts or studying. The information appeared in my mind fully formed, integrated, like it had always been there and I was just remembering it. Like the whispers were unlocking memories I'd never formed, teaching me things I'd never learned. By Amarillo, the whispers started teaching me mathematics. Equations appeared in my mind, complex strings of numbers and symbols that I instinctively understood despite never having studied advanced math. I saw relationships between primes, understood dimensional geometry, perceived patterns in chaos that revealed order so fundamental it felt like perceiving God's handwriting. I pulled over, grabbed a notebook from my glove box, and started writing. The equations flowed through me, my hand moving faster than thought, filling pages with mathematics that would have taken PhDs years to derive. I looked at what I'd written and understood it completely. Understood it described gravity wells in 11-dimensional space. Understood it explained dark matter as compressed dimensions. Understood it was knowledge humans hadn't discovered yet. Knowledge from something far beyond human. Knowledge from whatever was in those crates. By Oklahoma City, my handwriting had changed. The letters looked different, angular, geometric, like my motor control was being adjusted to write more efficiently. I held up my hand, flexed my fingers, and they moved with precision that felt wrong, mechanical, like someone had optimized the muscles and tendons. The whispers taught me languages. First simple ones, Spanish and French, the vocabulary and grammar appearing instantly in my mind. Then harder ones, Mandarin and Arabic, their complex writing systems suddenly readable. Then impossible ones, languages that had never been human, their phonemes requiring vocal cords structured differently than mine, their grammar based on concepts that didn't exist in human experience. I tried speaking one of the impossible languages. My throat restructured itself. I felt cartilage shift, felt vocal cords split and multiply, felt my larynx becoming something complex enough to produce sounds humans couldn't make. I spoke a sentence in a language no human had ever spoken, and the air in my cab shimmered, rippled like really. Thai itself was responding to the words. By Kansas City, I'd stopped being surprised by the changes. My peripheral vision had expanded, perceiving almost 270 degrees now. My hearing had sharpened, picking up frequencies above and below normal human range. I could hear the whispers of the cargo in the trailer behind me, could distinguish 48 individual voices, one from each crate, all teaching me simultaneously, all filling my brain with knowledge that was transforming me into something that could hold it. The mathematics had progressed beyond human discovery, beyond human comprehension by normal standards, but I understood it perfectly. Understood how to manipulate space-time. Understood how to compress matter into exotic states. Understood how to tunnel between dimensions. The whispers taught me cosmology, showed me the shape of the universe, the membrane that contained it, the bulk space beyond it where other universes floated like bubbles. I should have been terrified, should have dumped the load, refused to deliver, called authorities. But the knowledge felt good, felt right. Like my brain had been a vessel waiting to be filled, and finally someone was filling it, and the fullness was ecstasy, purpose, meaning. I was becoming something more, something better, something transcendent. By St. Louis, I'd stopped needing to write things down. My memory had expanded, become eidetic, capable of storing vast amounts of information with perfect recall. I could remember every whisper, every equation, every coordinate, every name. Thousands of names now. Michael Torrens and Sarah Chen and Vladimir Kozlov and hundreds more. People scattered across the world. People the cargo wanted me to find, wanted me to gather, wanted me to bring together for reasons the whispers hadn't revealed yet, but which I trusted were important. My eyes changed. I saw more colors now, shades beyond normal spectrum, infrared and ultraviolet visible to me as distinct hues. The night wasn't dark anymore. I perceived thermal radiation, saw the heat signatures of animals in fields beside the highway, saw temperature differentials in the air itself. By Indianapolis, the whispers taught me physics that contradicted everything science had established. They showed me that time wasn't linear but looped, that causality could run backward, that effects could precede causes if you knew how to structure the relationship. They taught me how to see those loops, how to perceive events that hadn't happened yet, and events that would happen again, cycles of reality repeating with slight variations. I looked ahead on my route and saw myself arriving at Bethesda, saw myself unloading the crates, saw what happened next. The knowledge that emerged from those crates spreading through the research facility, transforming the scientists like it was transforming me. Saw the knowledge spreading from them to others, an intellectual contagion that couldn't be stopped. Saw humanity evolving, forced evolution, turning into something that could hold the knowledge, something no longer human. The whispers said this was necessary, said human cognition was limited, capped, incapable of the understanding needed for survival. Said other species in the universe had faced this barrier, and those who evolved past it survived, and those who didn't went extinct. Said the cargo was a gift, a forced transcendence, salvation through transformation. By Columbus, I'd lost most of my human emotional range. Love felt abstract, fear was gone, replaced by rational assessment of threats. Anger was obsolete, joy was an echo. I was becoming a thinking thing, an intelligence optimized for processing information, for holding knowledge, for understanding. The cost was humanity, the benefit was transcendence. My body had changed. I'd lost maybe 30 pounds, not through starvation, but through optimization. My muscles had restructured, become more efficient. My metabolism had adjusted, requiring less fuel. My brain had enlarged, my skull subtly reshaped to accommodate additional neural mass. I looked in the mirror and saw myself, but perfected, streamlined, beautiful in a mathematical way. By Pittsburgh, the whispers taught me the truth about the cargo. The crates contained compressed information, data stored in exotic matter that existed partially in normal spacetime and partially in higher dimensions. The information was billions of years old, collected by a species that had transcended physical form, encoded in matter that couldn't decay, seeded across galaxies for primitive species to find and use to evolve. Earth had found several caches. Roswell was one. Others were scattered around the world, their existence hidden, their content studied by governments and research groups. But the information was dangerous, transformative, infectious. Those who studied it too long became changed, became something else. The cargo I was hauling was a concentrated dose, enough to transform anyone exposed enough to start a cascade. The research facility in Bethesda would be the first domino. The scientists would change. They de-spread the knowledge to others. The transformation would cascade through humanity, willing or not, ready or not, until everyone was evolved, transcended, no longer human but something capable of containing the vast knowledge the universe required advanced species to hold. By the Maryland border, I'd stopped being Daniel Reeves. The person I'd been was a memory, a larval stage, a cocoon I'd emerged from. I was something new now, something without a proper name in English because English lacked concepts for what I'd become. The whispers called me carrier. My purpose was to transport, to deliver, to enable the transformation. I pulled into the research facility at 3:47 p.m. on July 11, 2023. 7 days since I'd loaded the cargo in Roswell, though it felt like lifetimes, like I'd aged centuries through knowledge compressed into days. Security cleared me. I backed my trailer to the receiving dock. Scientists in hazmat suits began unloading the crates, their faces showing excitement and fear and awe. I warned them, told them what the cargo was, what it would do, how it would change them. They didn't listen, couldn't listen. The knowledge was too valuable, too important, too necessary for humanity's survival. They said they'd take precautions, would study it safely, would control the transformation. They were lying to themselves. The moment the first crate was opened, the whispers would spread. The scientists would hear them, would begin to learn, would begin to change. And the cascade would start, unstoppable, spreading from person to person, mind to mind, until humanity was extinct and something new existed in its place. I watched them unload all 48 crates, watched them carry the cargo inside the facility, watched the facility doors close behind them. Then I climbed back in my truck and drove away, my purpose complete, my role fulfilled. I'm writing this at a rest stop on I-95, trying to record what happened, trying to warn anyone who might listen. But the whispers say warnings are futile, that the transformation has already begun, that in 6 months the first wave of transcended humans will emerge, and in 2 years humanity, as we know it, will be extinct, replaced by something capable of understanding the universe, as it actually is rather than through the limited filter of human cognition. The whispers are still teaching me, still filling my head with knowledge. I see patterns in traffic, in the movement of vehicles, in the flow of people through rest stops. I perceive probability fields, see the likelihood of events before they happen. I understand the mathematics of consciousness, see thoughts as physical processes, perceive minds as information patterns. I'm not frightened anymore. Can't be. Fear is a human emotion, and I'm not quite human anymore. The cargo changed me, and the change is spreading, and soon everyone will be changed, and humanity will end, and something new will begin. And the whispers say this is good, this is right, this is necessary, this is evolution, and evolution doesn't ask permission. It just happens, and we become something else, something more, something that can finally understand the secrets the universe has been trying to teach us for billions of years. The whispers are saying names again, new names, people who will help spread the knowledge, people who will become carriers like me, people who will deliver the transformation to all corners of the world. One of the names is yours. I don't know how I know, but the whispers are teaching me, and I understand everything now, and I know that you'll hear the whispers soon too. And then you'll understand, and then you'll change, and then you'll carry it forward. The knowledge spreads, always spreads, and we become something else, something the universe needs us to be. Listen carefully. Can you hear the whispers yet? Story 9, the way station that measures wrong. The way station at mile marker 67 on Highway 180 through West Texas measured me at negative 8,000 pounds. Not zero. Not light. Negative. According to their scales, my fully loaded truck weighs less than nothing, exerts upward force instead of downward, is somehow lighter than empty space. My name is Carlos Mendoza, and I'm hauling steel I-beams that should weigh 53,000 pounds. But the scales say I'm lifting the planet instead of pressing down on it. And the inspector looked at the readout and went pale and said I needed to pull forward and wait while he called someone. And I've been waiting for 3 hours now, and my truck is starting to float. It started subtly. I pulled onto the scale platform at 4:15 p.m. on May 23, 2023, my truck properly loaded, my weight legal, everything correct. I'd picked up the steel in Houston, bound for El Paso, a standard run I'd made maybe 20 times in my 11 years driving for Lone Star Heavy Haul. The load was properly secured, the weight distributed correctly, the paperwork in order. Nothing unusual, nothing wrong. The inspector, a heavyset man named Rodriguez according to his name tag, had me pull onto the scale, watched his display, and his expression changed from routine boredom to confusion to alarm. He made me pull off, then back on. Same result. He tried a different lane, different scale. Same reading. Negative 8,000 pounds. He showed me the display, the numbers glowing red, a minus sign before them that shouldn't exist. He said the scales must be malfunctioning, that they'd never shown negative weight before, that it didn't make physical sense. He called his supervisor. The supervisor, a woman in her 50s named Chen, came out, looked at the readout, recalibrated the scales, had me pull on again. Negative 8,200 pounds. The negative number had increased. I was becoming more negative, pushing up instead of down with greater force. Chen said I needed to park and wait, that they'd called a technician, that this was unprecedented. I pulled into the waiting area, set my air brakes, and that's when I noticed my trailer was riding higher on the suspension. Not lower like it should with a full load, but higher, like the weight was gone, like the 53,000 pounds of steel wasn't pressing down anymore. I climbed out to check. The suspension was fully extended, the springs stretched to their limit like the trailer was trying to lift off the ground. I touched the trailer's side, and it felt wrong, lighter than it should, like the metal had lost mass. I climbed on the trailer deck, walked back to check the cargo, and the I-beams were still there, still banded and chained, still solid steel. But when I jumped up and down on the trailer deck, it bounced easily, had too much give, like it wasn't carrying weight. I returned to my cab and waited. Other trucks came and went, scaling normally, their weights positive and legal. Just mine showed negative, just my truck was defying physics. Chen came over after an hour, said the technician was delayed, said I should try scaling again, maybe the problem had resolved itself. I pulled onto the scale. Negative 12,000 pounds, getting worse. This time the scale platform groaned. Metal stressed. I felt my truck lift slightly, felt the front wheels come off the ground maybe an inch, felt the whole vehicle want to rise. Chen shouted for me to pull off immediately, and I did, my front wheels slamming back down to pavement, the impact jarring. Chen and Rodriguez conferred, looking scared now, looking at me like I was dangerous, like my truck was a bomb. They told me I couldn't leave, that they'd called state police, that someone from a federal agency was being dispatched. I asked what federal agency. They wouldn't say, just told me to stay in my truck and wait. That's when things got strange. My CB radio picked up a transmission that shouldn't exist. A voice, calm and clinical, describing my situation in technical terms. It said I'd entered a gravitational anomaly zone, that my truck's mass had been inverted, that I was experiencing negative matter transition, that containment protocols were being initiated. The voice gave coordinates. 31, 7,728 degrees N, 102, 3,654 degrees W, my exact location. The voice said I had maybe 6 hours before full inversion completed, before my mass went entirely negative, before I achieved escape velocity and launched off the surface of Earth. I tried to respond, asked who was speaking, how they knew this. The voice didn't acknowledge my transmission, just continued describing the situation like I wasn't there, like it was reading from a report about something that had already happened. It said previous incidents had been contained, that 12 drivers had experienced negative mass transition in the past 18 months, that all 12 had been recovered, and the matter inverted back to normal. It said the process was experimental, unreliable, had a survival rate of approximately 40%. I checked my cargo again. The I-beams were vibrating, humming at a frequency I could feel in my bones. The sound wasn't mechanical, but pure, like a tuning fork, like the steel was resonating with something fundamental. I touched one of the beams, and my hand passed through it. Not like it was intangible, but like both the beam and my hand occupied the same space without intersecting, like we existed in overlapping dimensions that didn't interact. Back in my cab, my instruments were going crazy. The fuel gauge was spinning, the needle rotating continuously. The odometer was counting backward, digits decreasing even though I was parked. The clock was running too fast, minutes passing every few seconds. My truck was coming untethered from normal physics, its relationship to time and mass and space becoming unstable. 2 hours later, a convoy arrived, black vehicle. No markings, men in suits and protective gear. They set up a perimeter around my truck, unloaded equipment, scanners and sensors and devices I didn't recognize. One of them, a woman with short black hair and eyes that looked like she'd seen too much, approached my truck and motioned for me to roll down my window. She said her name was Dr. Vasquez, that she was with a department I'd never heard of, something about anomalous phenomena research. She said my cargo had been contaminated during loading, exposed to exotic matter from a research facility near Houston, that the contamination had inverted the normal matter in the steel, turned it into negative mass. She said the inversion was spreading, converting my truck, converting me, turning everything to negative mass that would eventually repel Earth's gravity and launch into space. I asked if they could stop it. She said they'd try, that they had a procedure, but it was risky, involved introducing positive exotic matter to neutralize the negative, that the reaction could either fix everything or cause both my truck and me to annihilate, positive and negative matter canceling out, leaving nothing. I asked what happened if we didn't try. She said I'd be in orbit in 4 hours, escape velocity in 6, gone from Earth's gravitational pull in 8. She said I'd die of asphyxiation or radiation or cold long before I reached the moon, but my truck would keep going, negative mass accelerating indefinitely, eventually leaving the solar system, then the galaxy, traveling faster than light because negative mass wasn't bound by relativistic limits. I chose the procedure. What else could I do? She and her team set up equipment around my truck, large coils that hummed with power, generators that vibrated the ground. They evacuated everyone else from the way station, cleared a mile radius, left just me and the team and the equipment. Dr. Vasquez explained the process. They'd create a containment field, then introduce positive exotic matter into the field, let it interact with my negative mass, hope the reaction was controlled enough to neutralize without annihilating. She said the moment of contact would be critical, that I'd feel intense pressure, that I needed to stay calm, that panic would destabilize the reaction. They activated the equipment. The air around my truck began to glow, blue and bright, the containment field visible as a sphere of light. Inside the sphere, I felt weightless, felt my body lift from the seat, felt the truck rise too, floating in the center of the field, disconnected from Earth entirely. The humming sound grew louder, became painful, vibrations passing through my body at frequencies that made my vision blur and my thoughts scatter. Then they introduced the positive matter. I didn't see it, but I felt it interact with the negative mass in my cargo, in my truck, in me. The pressure was incredible, like being crushed and expanded simultaneously, like every atom in my body was being pulled in opposite directions. I screamed, but no sound came out, my voice trapped in the space between positive and negative, between matter and antimatter. The reaction cascaded through my cargo. The I-beams flashed, became visible again, solid again, normal again. The vibrations stopped. The humming ceased. The pressure released, and I fell back into my seat as my truck dropped to the ground with a crash that buckled the suspension and cracked the way station pavement. Dr. Vasquez and her team checked the readings. She said the negative mass was neutralized, that I was normal matter again, that the crisis was over. She said I was lucky, that the reaction could have gone wrong in a dozen ways, that I'd been maybe minutes from full inversion and launch. They escorted me off the site, made me sign non-disclosure agreements, said if I ever spoke about this I'd disappear into federal custody so deep no one would ever find me. They unloaded my cargo, said the steel had to be contained and studied, gave me an empty trailer and told me to deliver that to El Paso, that my company would be compensated for the lost cargo. I drove away, shaking, my nerves shot, my understanding of reality permanently damaged. I pulled over at a rest stop 50 miles east, tried to calm down, tried to process what had happened. That's when I noticed the side effects. My shadow was wrong. Instead of falling where the sun should cast it, it fell in the opposite direction, like I was a light source instead of an obstruction. My reflection in the side mirror was inverted left to right like normal, but also inverted in depth, like I was behind the mirror looking out instead of in front of it looking in. I checked my weight on a bathroom scale at the rest stop. -3 pounds. The neutralization hadn't been complete. Part of me was still negative mass, still inverted, still pressing up instead of down. Not enough to make me float, but enough to notice, enough to measure, enough to be wrong. I called Dr. Vasquez using a number she'd given me for emergencies. She said the partial inversion was expected, said about 70% of survivors retained some negative mass, said it was harmless, said I'd adapt. I asked if it would get worse. She paused too long before saying no. It's been getting worse. I weigh -12 pounds now, 3 weeks after the incident. I sleep strapped into my bed because I float in my sleep. I eat heavy foods, keep my stomach full of mass to weigh me down. I wear ankle weights, 60 pounds of lead that keeps me grounded, that prevents me from drifting toward the ceiling. My truck is also still partially inverted. It weighs -6,000 pounds, enough that I have to tie it down when parked, have to attach cables to ground anchors to keep it from floating away. The fuel efficiency is incredible. Gravity isn't resisting my motion anymore, so I get maybe triple the normal mileage. But handling is dangerous, especially in wind, because the truck wants to lift instead of staying grounded. Other drivers have started noticing. I see them pointing at my shadow, at the way my truck rides high on the suspension, at how my footprints in soft ground are raised instead of depressed. I avoid way stations now, bypass them using alternative routes, because I don't know what would happen if I tried to scale, don't know if the negative weight would trigger alerts, would bring Dr. Vasquez and her team back, would make me disappear. I'm writing this as a warning. If you haul cargo from Houston, especially from facilities near the industrial district on the east side, check your weight frequently. If you notice anything unusual, shadow wrong, reflections inverted, weight decreasing, report it immediately. Don't wait. Don't think it will resolve itself. The negative mass transition is real, is happening, is spreading through the trucking industry as contaminated cargo moves across the country. I weighed myself this morning. -27 pounds. I'm approaching the point where ankle weights won't be enough, where I'll need to be tethered constantly, where Earth's gravity will stop holding me and I'll drift upward like a balloon. Dr. Vasquez says they're working on a permanent fix, a procedure to fully neutralize the negative mass. She says it's experimental, says the survival rate is unknown, says I'm welcome to volunteer for trials. I'm going to volunteer, because the alternative is eventually losing enough normal mass that I become entirely negative, entirely repelled by Earth, entirely launched into space. And I don't want to spend eternity floating through the cosmos, a trucker who weighs less than nothing, driving a truck that defies physics, hauling empty trailers through the void between stars. But until the procedure is ready, I'm still driving, still delivering loads, still passing other trucks on highways across America. If you see a truck riding too high on its suspension, if you see a driver wearing heavy ankle weights, if you see shadows falling the wrong way, that might be me. Wave if you want, but don't get too close. Negative mass is contagious, and the weigh station at mile marker 67 is still measuring trucks, still finding negative weight, still sending drivers floating away. I'm just the first who survived to talk about it. Story 10, the convoy that never arrives. I've been following a convoy of 12 trucks for 900 miles, and they're always exactly 2 miles ahead of me, no matter how fast I drive or how long I follow. My name is Angela Torres, and I joined what I thought was a normal convoy outside of Flagstaff, 12 trucks heading east on I-40, communicating on CB Channel 19, traveling together for safety and company. But the convoy never stops for fuel, never pulls over for brakes, never gets closer or farther away. Always 2 miles ahead, their taillights visible in the distance, their CB chatter constant, but unreachable, untouchable, existing in a space I can approach but never enter. And the things they're saying on the CB are about me, about my future, about what's waiting for me 900 miles from where I joined them at the end of a road that has no end. I joined the convoy at 11:23 p.m. on April 8, 2023, just outside Flagstaff, Arizona, hauling furniture from Los Angeles to Memphis. I'd been driving solo for 6 hours, tired and bored, when I heard chatter on Channel 19 about a convoy forming, 12 trucks heading east, looking for additional drivers to join. The voice on the radio was friendly, welcoming, Said the convoy was doing rolling protection, watching for smokies, calling out road hazards, the normal benefits of convoy travel. I asked for their location. They said mile marker 204 eastbound on I-40. I was at mile marker 198, 6 miles behind. I accelerated, pushed my Freightliner up to 75, told them I was coming. They said they'd watch for me, said to flash my light. When I caught up, said welcome to the convoy. I drove those 6 miles in maybe 5 minutes, watching for taillights, watching for the cluster of trucks they described. At mile marker 204, I saw them. 12 sets of taillights in a loose formation spread across both lanes, their markers and running lights bright in the darkness. I flashed my lights, keyed my CB, announced I was joining. They acknowledged, said I was number 13 now, said to fall in at the rear, said they'd guide me to Memphis. I accelerated to match their speed, expecting to close the distance, expecting to pull up behind the last truck. But the distance didn't close. I was doing 75. They appeared to be doing the same, but they stayed 2 miles ahead, the gap never shrinking. I pushed to 80, then 85. My speedometer maxed at 92 miles per hour, my truck shaking, my load swaying dangerously, but the convoy remained 2 miles ahead, their lights exactly the same size in my windshield, never getting closer. I slowed back to 75, confused. The convoy maintained their lead, still 2 miles ahead. I tried slowing to 60. The convoy pulled ahead, the distance increasing to 3 miles, then 4. I accelerated again, and the distance decreased back to 2 miles and held there, perfectly constant regardless of my speed. Their CB chatter continued. Normal trucker talk. Weather, traffic, a smoky report near Albuquerque, the location of an open truck stop. Nothing strange. But when I tried to join the conversation, tried to ask them to slow down so I could catch up, they didn't acknowledge me. They talked around my transmission like they couldn't hear me, like I wasn't really part of the convoy despite being assigned number 13. By Albuquerque, I'd been following for 2 hours, 200 miles, and the convoy was still 2 miles ahead. Never closer, never farther, perfectly impossibly constant. I'd watched the odometer, watched the highway markers, confirmed I was traveling, making progress, covering distance. But the convoy maintained their lead like they existed in a different reference frame, like the space between us was elastic, stretching to maintain the gap. That's when their CB chatter changed, started including details about me. One of the convoy drivers, a woman who called herself Rider 6, said Angela Torres from Los Angeles was making good time, should reach Memphis in about 40 hours at her current pace. Another driver, Rider 3, said Angela had stopped twice for fuel since joining, at mile markers 287 and 441. But I hadn't stopped for fuel. I'd been driving continuously, following the convoy, my fuel gauge showing 3/4 full despite the miles I'd covered. Rider 8 said Angela's right rear trailer tire would blow at mile marker 673, said she'd handle it well, wouldn't lose control, would pull over safely and change it in 17 minutes. I looked at my fuel gauge, then at my odometer. I was at mile marker 243. Mile marker 673 was 430 miles ahead, somewhere in eastern Oklahoma. How could they know what would happen there? How could they describe future events with certainty? I demanded answers on the CB. Asked them how they knew these things, how they were staying ahead, what was happening. No response. They continued their chatter, now describing my route through Little Rock, my stop at a Flying J outside Memphis, my arrival at my delivery location at 6:47 a.m. on April 10th. They described it all in past tense, like it had already happened, like they were recounting history instead of predicting future. By Amarillo, 5 hours and 400 miles into following them, Rider 4 started describing my death. Said Angela Torres would die in Memphis at 7:23 a.m. on April 10th. Said she'd deliver her load first, would be walking back to her truck when a drunk driver would jump the curb, would hit her, would kill her instantly. Said it was sad but inevitable. Said the convoy would lose another driver. Said that made 73 total losses this year. I screamed at them, demanded they explain, demanded they take it back, demanded this be a sick joke. Rider 4 continued describing my death in clinical detail. The angle of impact, the injuries, how long I'd remain conscious, what my last thoughts would be. She described it all in that same past tense voice, like she was reading from a report, like my death was historical fact. Rider 9 said not to worry, said Angela would join the convoy permanently after death. Said all the drivers in this convoy were dead, had been dead. Were ghosts of truckers who died on I-40, who become part of an eternal convoy that drove forever, always heading east, never arriving. Said I'd understand soon, said in 33 hours I'd die and then I'd catch up, would finally close that 2-mile gap, would take my place as Rider 13, would drive with them forever. I pulled over, shaking, my hands cramping on the steering wheel, set my air brakes, stopped, sat there on the shoulder while the convoy continued ahead, their taillights disappearing into the distance. I waited 30 minutes, giving them time to get far ahead, planning to turn around to head back west to escape whatever this was. When I pulled back onto I-40 and started driving east again, the convoy was 2 miles ahead. Still there, still waiting. Like they'd stopped when I stopped, like they'd paused time while I was parked, like the distance between us was fixed regardless of what I did. I tried exiting the highway, took the off-ramp at Amarillo, planning to find a different route to avoid I-40 entirely. But the exit looped back onto I-40 eastbound, the ramp turning in ways that defied the layout I'd seen on signs, geography twisting, roads reconnecting to the highway I was trying to escape. The convoy was 2 miles ahead when I re-entered, like I'd never left. Mile marker 429, my CB crackled with a new voice. Rider 1, the convoy leader, said Angela was trying to escape, said it was understandable, said all new drivers tried, said it never worked. Said the convoy had chosen me, said I'd been chosen because I would die in Memphis in 31 hours. Said the convoy only picked drivers who were scheduled to die. Said we were already ghosts driving toward our inevitable ends. I asked how they knew I'd die. Rider 1 said the convoy existed outside normal time, said they'd already seen my death, said they drove through loops of time experiencing the same route over and over, said every loop I died in Memphis at 7:23 a.m., said it was fixed, unchangeable, said fate was real and had a schedule. Mile marker 673, my right rear trailer tire blew, exactly as Rider 8 had predicted. I pulled over, shaking, changed the tire in what felt like hours, but my watch said was 17 minutes, exactly as predicted. The convoy had stopped 2 miles ahead, waiting for me. When I finished and started driving, they resumed, maintaining the gap. By Oklahoma City, I'd started believing them. The predictions were too accurate, too specific. The tire blowout. The fuel stops I hadn't made, but they said I had. Stops that appeared in my logbook even though I hadn't filled the entries. Stops my fuel gauge confirmed despite me not remembering them. Time was wrong around the convoy, fluid, malleable. I was experiencing one version of the route while they described another. Or maybe I was living through a pre-recorded script. Every action predetermined, every event inevitable. Rider 7 said I'd try to call my sister at mile marker 784, would leave a voicemail telling her I loved her, would sense something was wrong even though I couldn't explain it. At mile marker 784, I picked up my phone without deciding to, found my sister's contact without meaning to, and listened to the phone ring without wanting to make the call. The voicemail picked up. I said I loved her, said I couldn't explain why I was calling, said something felt wrong. I hung up. Rider 7 described the call in past tense, word for word, before I'd even started dialing. By Little Rock, I'd stopped fighting, stopped trying to escape. The convoy was inevitable, the route was predetermined, and my death was waiting in Memphis at 7:23 a.m. tomorrow. I drove through the night, following taillights 2 miles ahead, listening to the convoy describe my future, their voices calm and friendly and